And Mr. Dowdy, we are ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the District 225 Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Dowdy?
Here.
Mr. Glowacki?
Present.
Ms. Mullenbeck?
Here.
Mr. O'Hara?
Here.
Ms. Siegwin?
Here.
Mr. Schein?
Present.
Here. Mr. Schein?
Yes, I'm present.
Dr. Steinberg?
Here.
Item 2 on our agenda is approving the agenda for this meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Good evening, everyone. Before we begin our meeting tonight, I'd like to take a moment to remember Glenbrook South senior Marco Niketic. As we learned this morning, Marco's life was tragically cut short in an automobile accident late last night. The news has deeply affected our District 225 community, particularly our students, staff, and families. In times like these, it's essential to remember that we're not alone in our sorrow. Together as a community, we can provide support and solace to one another through the challenging days ahead. I'd like us all now to join me in a moment of silence to remember Marco Niketic, a bright, talented, and loved member of our district community. Thank you. We are also aware of others who were involved in this tragic accident. Out of respect for the family's wishes, we are not sharing their names this evening. However, we want them to know that they're also in our thoughts, and we're here to offer our support whenever and however they need it. Again, thank you. Turning to what's ahead of us this evening, we actually have 2 meetings. They are successive, I promise. The first is the final meeting of our current board. We'll have our typical period of public comment and consent. Then we will move into our second meeting, the organizational meeting. And after we do our organizational meeting, we'll have a regular agenda, which will contain 7 items. We'll have a presentation of the full strategic plan, on which people have been working for a year. We'll have a presentation on the Accelerated Placement Act and how our curriculum and our schools will be adjusting and making things even more challenging and excellent like Glenbrook's from that. We'll also have our amended budget for 23-24 fiscal year, followed by our computer replacement for our staff computers, student photography and student fees items, and then finally we'll finish with some policies on first reads as we continue our project of updating all of our policies. I thank you all again for being here this evening. Item 3 on our agenda is our recognition of community visitors. Do we have any tonight, Dr. Johns?
No, Mr. Dowdy, no one has signed up to address the board tonight.
As we always remind people, this is a period of the meeting where we open to the public. We always value the input we get either here or in writing or phone calls or texts or stopping us in our communities. That input is always important to us because it allows us to function better as a board and hopefully the administration and all of our schools even more responsive for our students and our families. Item 4 on our agenda is our consent agenda. And Dr. Johns, are there any changes in the consent agenda?
Nope, the agenda is as published.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Are there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, take a roll, please.
Mr. Dowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Mr. Schein,
yes,
So Mr. Stein will not be voting this evening. He will be participating just due to state rules.
okay, and Dr. Steinberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Item 5 on our agenda is the adjournment of the board meeting sine die. And as much as there is no further business to come before this board, a motion for adjournment sine die is needed.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of the motion to adjourn sine die signify the same by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
That concludes our first meeting, and now we're going to move on to our second meeting. We will start with a motion to establish a chairman, and I move to appoint Charles Johns to serve as chairman pro tem.
Second.
Arshay, do you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yes, forgive me, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Schein is on and can hear us. However, we're having technical difficulties. He's unable to speak. I just wanted to share so
Thank you
everyone's
for
aware.
letting us know, Dr. Gravel. Okay, I believe we have a motion and a second, so we just need, all in favor of the motion? Aye.
Can I have a nomination to establish a secretary pro tem?
Charles, please.
Carol Smith?
My problem. Thank you. So Carol Smith has been nominated to be secretary pro tem. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Time to call to order. The District 225 Board of Education will now come to order. Can I have approval of the agenda for the meeting?
I move to approve the agenda for this meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Glowacki. We'll begin with the nomination and election of the President of the Board of Education. The office of the President is elected for a one-year term. Nominations need not be seconded.
I apologize again. We have a motion, then we have to approve the motion.
Which motion?
I'm about to ask for it.
Well, you,
Which one
you
are
just said and you second something, right?
Oh, on the agenda.
Thank you. I turned the page and
Wasn't there?
it's a good thing you're doing this normally. So can I now have a vote on the motion of the agenda for this meeting?
Aye.
All agree?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we may proceed
Now you can turn it
to
to
the election of the president for 1 year. Nominations need not be seconded. The chair will entertain nominations for the board president to serve for a term of 1 year.
I nominate Mr. Bruce Doughty to serve as president for the term of 1 year.
Mr. Doughty is nominated. Are there other nominations for the office of president? Since only one member is nominated, the secretary pro tem records a unanimous vote for the member who is thereupon declared elected, whereupon the chair pro tem relinquishes the chair to the newly elected president. Mr. Doughty, congratulations.
Thank you.
Resume the gavel.
I now call for nominations for the office of vice president. The office of vice president is elected for a one-year term. Nominations need not be seconded. The chair will entertain nominations for board vice president to serve for a term of 1 year now.
I nominate Mr. Peter Klawacki.
Mr. Peter Glowacki has been nominated. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Hearing none, I instruct the secretary pro tem to record a unanimous vote for Mr. Glowacki, who is thereupon and has now declared our vice president. Congratulations, Mr. Glowacki. We now move on to nominations and election for the position of treasurer of the Board of Education. The office of treasurer is elected for a one-year term. Again, nominations need not be seconded. The chair will entertain now nominations for the board treasurer to serve a term of 1 year. Vicky?
I nominate Vicky Tauber to serve as treasurer for the board.
Ms. Vicky Tarver has now been nominated to be treasurer of the Board of Education. Are there any other nominations for the office of treasurer? Hearing none, I instruct the secretary pro tem to cast a unanimous ballot for Ms. Vicky Tarver, who is now declared elected treasurer. Congratulations, Ms. Tarver. Our final nomination, election, or appointment is for the secretary of the Board of Education. The
Enough.
office.
Go ahead.
The office of secretary is elected for a one-year term. Nominations need not be seconded. The chair now will entertain nominations for Board of Secretary to serve a term of 1 year.
I nominate Ms. Carol Smith.
Ms. Carol Smith has been nominated as secretary. Are there any other nominations for secretary? Hearing none, the secretary pro tem, who happens to be Ms. Smith, is instructed to cast unanimous ballot for Ms. Smith, who is thereupon declared elected. Congratulations, Ms. Smith. And with that, we now move past that to item 6.9 on our agenda. So that was the first 6.1 through 6.8. 6.9 is the regular board meeting and dates and times for the 24-25 school year. We did have an attachment with those meetings. Dr. Johns, you want to elaborate?
We use the format for our normal schedule of meetings to create the 24-25 school year's calendars. We believe we've checked for various conflicts. Please take a look at those. If there is a conflict, let us know and we'll see what sort of arrangements need to be made.
Okay, and then will that come back ultimately on consent?
Yes, it will come back at our next meeting for consent.
Okay, so board members, if there's anything that particularly sticks out, we all miss things from time to time, but if something particularly sticks out, please do let us know. Item 6.10 on our agenda is our committee appointments and member representatives. There's an attachment of the current positions that the members hold. Please let me or Dr. Johns know if you'd like to change committees or assignments. We try to move things around from time to time, but if people are happy, that's fine too. But please do let us know if there's some change you'd like to make, and we're happy to try to accommodate that. And if you could do that over the next couple of weeks, that'd be helpful. I don't know when Dr. Gravel, do you know when the next committee meets? Dr. Gravel. Do you know when our next committee meetings are? Are they in June or July?
The next committee meetings, following everyone's confirmation of the committee that they'll be on, will reach out to each of the respective committee memberships, confirm 3 or 4 proposed dates, and kind of go from there. One of the questions that I would just offer for members of the board to consider is, we seem to have had some good success having meetings prior to the board meeting as opposed to earlier in the morning. So that might be something that we want to explore and just see what the preference is of the committee. The next meeting that is on the schedule will be for the Finance Committee, and they will need to meet within the next 3 weeks to review tentative budget and financial projections. The Facilities Committee will not meet again until around August time, which will be a walk of the recently completed capital projects.
Thank you for that insight. Again, do please let me know if there's, or Dr. Johns know if there's any changes wished. We do move things around, and it's great when people have different experiences, so happy to do that. Item 7 on our agenda, our board and superintendent reports. Board members, anything you want to report tonight? Okay, Dr. Johns, anything you'd like to report tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. There'll be no superintendent or principal reports this year. Thank
Okay.
you.
I know we've healthy agenda ahead of us, which is great. We'll move to item 8 on our agenda, which is discussion and action items. The first item up is our strategic plan, which we have attachments on. This is the first full time we've heard it during the year. We've seen things. It's the first time we've seen a full presentation, which we're very excited to have. This is tremendously important work. It's a huge undertaking across our entire district, and I know many of you in this room have spent countless hours working on this, putting your heart and soul into it, and there are lots of folks who are not sitting in here who have done the same. So I want to start with incredible gratitude to all of you, the leadership of Ms. Smith and others on this. Greatly appreciated. Our faculty, staff, parents, students, and communities, and our outside consultants as well. We should be very proud of this process. It's been multi-tiered, gathering, organizing information, discussing, focusing, drafting, collaboratively and thoughtfully working through a process. This process is one of the hallmarks of what we call our Glenbrook excellence. We do things well, we do them carefully, we do them thoughtfully, and we do them in a collaborative process. And this is absolutely the kinds of examples that I know the board is very proud to see. And the substance also really should be proud of. This is broad, aspirational focusing. It's a living plan. It will endure but be dynamic. It will prioritize but not be rigid. So we'll be discussing tonight. We'll have points come up. And if we have follow-up, we'll do follow-up. Otherwise, at the moment, it is scheduled to come back before us in a couple of weeks. I think it's actually Tuesday the 28th, given Memorial Day. But with that quick gratitude more than anything else for all the hard work, and I turn it over to Dr. Johns, who I think has a much more thorough overview.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. For nearly a year, volunteer students, staff, parents, and community partners have dedicated themselves to studying the collective hopes and aspirations for Glenbrook District 225. Led by Ms. Smith, I'm very grateful for their hard work. The work of the participants throughout this process has been exhausting. Aside from the considerable amount of time and energy, they took the task to heart. They brought their whole selves to the discussions and were deeply committed to the outcome. The committee members carefully analyzed the data collected through several surveys soliciting our community's perspectives. It was inspiring to see how all voices, especially the voices of our students, were highly regarded as community members developed their focus areas. The team tackled challenging topics, engaged in debate, and leaned into disagreements as opportunities for growth. Through this sharing of ideas and perspectives, the group navigated towards a consensus, forging a clear pathway ahead for our district. Additionally, the committee members gave their time outside of the meetings to review, reflect, edit, and make suggestions to a series of draft documents that were created. This hard work is a testament to the dedication and conviction of the members of the committee who contributed to this process. I believe the district can be proud of the informative and unique strategic plan developed by this team. Readers will notice that many of the initiatives already in place or under development in the district are endorsed by this strategic plan. It confirms that much of the work the team has been committed to for years is valued, needed, and appreciated. There is consensus that we have met fundamentals of a high-quality education, yet there are areas upon which we can grow and develop. It acts as a unifying force. It brings coherence to the district's endeavors by outlining principles and objectives, thereby enhancing communication. There is a great deal of work ahead. District community members need to be aware of this plan and how it will function as a tool for setting priorities and direction. Over the upcoming months, district leaders will break the goals down to a tactical level, devising collaborative strategies to demonstrate tangible progress towards their attainment. Of course, good strategic plans are inherently flexible, requiring circumspection to ensure that we can adapt to challenges and opportunities that emerge along the way. The contents of this plan clearly showed the type of district we want to be and can be, a district that creates opportunities for its students, values its staff, and appreciates the support and contributions of our families and community partners. I believe with a faithful commitment to the principles portrayed in this plan, that Glenbrook District 225 will continue to be a beacon of excellence in education for many years to come. I know that Ms. Smith wants to lead off on some words because we have a team of people. Many of the contributors to this work are here today to walk us through the plan and share us with the highlights. Ms. Smith?
Are you flipping? Oh my gosh. Does not bode well. Good evening, President Dowdy, members of the board, Dr. Johns, and fellow core planning and design team members. I'm here tonight with members of the core planning team, the design team, as well as Susan Brott, who's our representative from CISO Communications. We are really very excited to present the proposed strategic plan, which was developed in collaboration with members of the District 225 community. You gonna click? I can, okay.
Good evening, President Doty, Dr. Johns, members of the Board of Education here. It's been a true pleasure over these last several months to come here, meet with outstanding individuals and team members and community members, and really to learn about the Glenbrooks, even to learn that you call yourself the Glenbrooks. So it's been a really interesting community to learn in, and I'm excited to be here tonight with the team. So with that, we wanted to talk a little bit, we use kind of a tree analogy when we talk about the strategic plan elements. And so we always start at that foundational level. So we kind of think of it as a bottom up. And so we start with the foundations of those core values. And so we'll be talking about some updates to the values later in the process, in the presentation tonight. We will also be then focusing on the mission statement, which is that trunk of the tree. It's the stability of the tree. So that's the work you do every day, moving to the vision and then moving on to focus areas and actions, which are the branches and the leaves that we need to put out there. And we know that the strategic plan is inherently a change initiative. So you don't do strategic plans to keep status quo. So we know that there's going to be some things that might look a little bit different, but as Dr. Johns already articulated, there's a lot of work that's already started or underway, and we really appreciate that. But we're focused on the future. And you've seen this before. This is sort of our overall approach that we take with CISO Communications in working through, and I won't go through this in detail because I know you've learned of it before, but we started last summer actually doing research and planning. We did that first round of community engagement where we got to hear from lots of different voices in November and December. And then in late January, early February, we started the work with the core planning teams and the design team to develop a draft plan. One of the things that we're very proud of is that we go back to the community to say, hey, are we on the right track? And so we got some great insights from that. Then we refine that plan, and then we eventually bring it to you for additional refinement and adoption. So at the core of our work, and it's something that we believe strongly in, is that we need to have community involvement in a plan. And so as many diverse representative voices were held, we did focus, as we shared previously back in February, I think Ms. Smith presented back in February about those fall engagements. And it really was focused on that core question of what do District 225 students need to be prepared and hopeful for their future. We heard from students, staff, parents, family, alumni, community members. Those were all done in November, December. Our general focus question was, as I shared, the core planning team and the design team used the results of these engagements along with other district data to really inform the work and the development of that initial draft plan. Recall that in our fall engagements, we used a variety of collection methods from focus groups, surveys, thought exchange, open insights at school sites, community workshops. And so really focusing again on what do students need for their future. And then just a reminder of what were some of those key themes and skills that we heard, what that students need. So a large focus on life skills, mental health, relationships, college and career counseling, and growth mindset. It should also be noted that in every group, participants held conversations about the strength of the academic experience in this district and wanting to make sure that that was upheld, which is why you will see that later in the presentation. There was also an interest in making sure that all students feel welcome and valued for their individual contributions to Glenbrook 225. Perhaps nowhere was that discussion more passionate than when I had the opportunity to speak with students and staff at GBOC. Because they see that they sometimes feel like they're outsiders. And so I think by bringing all of those voices in and making sure that all those voices are represented in the plan, you will see that belonging is also a key part of the directions as we move forward.
So the overall work of the two teams was future focused, helping to determine the strategic direction and priorities of our district for the next 3 to 5 years, while also rooting ourselves in the importance of continuous improvement. The 30-member core planning team, as Susan talked about, I mean, it was reflective of the community. So we had students, parents, staff members, teachers, administrators, alumni, and community members who participated. Over 2 days in February, the team worked through several activities and workshops that helped them not only build themselves as a team, but also their capacity as a team before really analyzing the data, and by first observing and detecting patterns and then kind of organizing those patterns and those themes into the priorities. After creating a practical vision for the plan, participants also had important discussions about potential barriers that could prevent the attainment of the vision. Those conversations truly helped the committee to develop the strategic direction and priorities. The design team, composed of district leaders, reviewed the work of the core planning team in order to really identify where there could be coordination with other district initiatives. And as a team, we were really pleased to see how their vision connects to current and ongoing efforts that are already in the district. In the second iteration, both teams were able to virtually engage in discussions about the revised framework, ensuring all team members had the opportunity to share insights and feedback before we took it to the community for the second time. So right now, I would really like to acknowledge our core planning and design team members in our audience, and also some that are watching at home. Thank them for their efforts. And if you were part of the team, could you please stand up?
So next we have what was developed then from these awesome individuals was a draft strategic framework. These are the 4 focus areas that came forward in March that we went back to the community and said, what do you think? Give us your feedback. And so the first one was really focused on the building meaningful relationships and pathways that adapt to the needs of each student. So the focus was really on those relationships that students have and the pathways that they have. And you will see how that evolved into something else down the line. We focused on the climate and culture in focus area number 2. The third one focused on the classroom experience and student learning. And then the fourth one really highlighted strategies for strengthening leadership throughout the district. The next slide, we don't expect you to read because it's very small. But this is what was presented to the community so they could see how those pieces came together, what was the purpose statement for each of those, and then what were some priority outcomes that they would hope to see. This is how they were able to provide feedback, and they provided some really great feedback for that. So just to summarize some of what we learned with that survey that we did in the spring, we did put it out on an online survey available in English, Spanish, Korean, and Mongolian. And we had participants take that survey in all of those languages, although I don't think we had any Mongolian. No, we had one.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. Yes, we had one. So it's really helpful that we were able to provide it in languages that were accessible to them. So when you look at the first draft focus area, some of the feedback that we heard, that was about how do we make sure that students have those relationships and those pathways, that there was a lot of appreciation on the focus on helping each student and not just assuming that everyone learns in their same way. There was also a lot of interest and appreciation for that focus on helping students find their path, helping them explore what they want to learn. Challenge that we heard back from survey respondents was that the inclusion of both relationships and pathways got a little bit confusing, and they felt like 2 very distinct things. And so as a result, when we reconvened the core planning team and the design team in early April, we were able to kind of separate some of those out and put one that's more focused on the academic learning part and one that was more focused on that relationship part. And then there was a need for clarity of how these work together and the importance of dedicating some sort of time to students in the school day, perhaps, or some other way to develop those life skills that were so identified as being so important, as well as to make sure that there's well-being being provided, supports being provided for students. In the second focus area, we had a strong appreciation again for, we really feel that this is again going to sustain high academic achievement and address some gaps. There were suggestions for some clarity of language, but the majority of it was about how do we balance social emotional learning with academics. And so how do we make sure that both of those are held to importance and not have one overtake the other? And then especially wanting to not lose that focus on academic achievement in this district, since it is such a hallmark. The third focus area, we looked at how to reimagine that classroom experience. So this is more of that learning experience. What's the instruction? How are we doing? So really thinking about how the district can support those. And so in consistency in learning, how do we do that between 2 schools while still allowing each school to have its individual identity, but making sure that just because I happen to live on one side of the district, that I'm not going to get a completely different experience than students on the other side of the district. And then also encouraging teachers and giving them permission to be creative and innovative in their instruction so that students are getting what they need, knowing that the future is always going to be changing. And the last focus area, number 4, was focused on leadership development in terms within the organization. And there was a appreciation for that collaboration between all of the different sites and programs. So whether it's GBN, GBS, GBOC, GBA. But all of those programs coming together and saying we all need to work together and support each other. There's leadership development that can happen amongst staff, amongst the leaders of the district, amongst students. So how do we really empower all of our families or all of our students and staff to have that leadership opportunity and growth? So now we get to the more fun part. So that's how we got here. And now we're actually here very excited tonight to present the strategic plan. As I mentioned earlier, the two teams reconvened on April 2nd. They came together this time, and which actually was suggestion of some members of the core planning team to say, let's bring together, let's all meet together. And I think it really worked out well to build consensus and trust. Using the survey data that we just walked through, and there was a lot more data, and they did a good data dive of that, about the draft framework. They worked to update the strategic focus areas. And so what follows, and members of our teams will be presenting here tonight, what follows is the culmination of our journey in developing a strategic plan that's inclusive of updated values, mission, and vision, and strategic focus areas, all of which will guide the district's work for the next 5 years.
Just making sure. Throughout the process, a couple of key themes really kept surfacing. While strategic plans are inherently about change and growth, there was a strong desire to uphold the district's tradition of high expectations and academic achievement for all students. As such, the teams felt very strongly that this overarching statement that introduces the focus areas really serves as the lens through which the district will advance the plan. So now I'd like to introduce our first team of presenters to introduce themselves and review focus area 1. I can read it. The overarching statement is, in order to continue our commitment to high expectations and academic achievement for all students, the following focus areas will guide the work of District 225 over the next 3 to 5 years.
Good evening, Board of Education members and Superintendent Johns. My name is Sarah Chinwala, and I'm currently a senior at Glenbrook North. I was honored to be a member of the core planning team. It was a great experience for me working with the other members of the team to develop this proposed strategic plan for your review. Andrew and I will be presenting you about Strategic Focus Area 1, developing and empowering students within the Glenbrooks and beyond.
Thank you, Sarah, and congrats on finishing your AP exams today. My name is Andrew Brandner. I am the parent of a freshman at Glenbrook North and a 2022 graduate of Glenbrook North as well. I am not originally from this area, but one of the reasons my wife and I moved here was the excellence of District 225 and Feeder District 27. I echo what Sarah said about the collaborative experience and what Ms. Smith as well. It was a very interesting process. As a school district, we know our priority is learning and supporting each student to be prepared for post-secondary education, career, and life. And I think the life piece is very important, especially with, unfortunately, the tragedy that happened yesterday. This direction focuses on how we will support and empower students in the Glenbrooks during their time in our district and after graduation, making sure that each student has access to the academic instruction and supports that they specifically need. In reviewing the feedback from our community on this draft direction, we heard a need for more clarity on how the district will support learners and what additional instruction will be offered. To that end, we identified key outcome goals we believe will advance student success. Employability skills and social emotional learning will be incorporated to enhance the student experience. That is, the district needs to find ways to weave the life skills, critical thinking, and mental health support into all aspects of a student's experience and not leave it to chance. And that is a skill that'll take someone long beyond their time here at District 225, excuse me. Staff will be provided professional supports and systems that allow them to innovate and implement creative strategies to help students explore their passions and their interests. By this, we mean teachers and staff will be provided opportunity to learn about and encouraged to explore new instructional methods and approaches, with the focus on empowering students to take more ownership of their learning. We also want to see the district offer more opportunities for students to explore new topics and content, helping them to identify interests and passions.
In addition, our community expressed a desire to focus on making sure students have what they need to support their successes. We took this feedback to update 2 additional goals. Each student will develop a dynamic plan to navigate their Glenbrook experience. Students will engage with these plans throughout high school in partnership with counselors and parents/guardians. We want the 4-year plans that students develop in 9th grade to be flexible and open to new interests and learning. We also want student conversations with counselors to be in partnership with families, as they often are currently done in isolation. Students will be provided opportunities to explore various post-secondary options and career paths while building connections with professionals both inside and outside school who will support them in their journey. This goal speaks to the need to offer more internship, externship, and career exploration opportunities to students while in the Glenbrooks. By focusing on these outcomes and ensuring that both academic instruction and supports are being provided, we feel confident that Glenbrook students will continue to be well-served and prepared for their future. Now I'd like to invite Izzy to present Focus Area 2.
Good evening, School Board and Dr. Johns. My name is Izzy Augustin, and I am currently a junior at Glenbrook South. I was also a member of the core planning team, which was an interesting experience to see how much thought and planning goes into our curriculum. Ms. Sterling and I are presenting Strategic Focus Area 2, Improving the Culture and Climate in District 225 through Meaningful Relationships.
Thank you, Izzy. I really enjoyed working with you and all the other students in this process. Good evening to the board. As some of you know, my name is Jill Sterling and I teach physics at Glenbrook South. We learned from last fall's engagements that the community and especially our students are very interested in improving the culture and climate in District 225. The data from the engagements, as well as the data from last year's Culture and Climate Survey, confirm that ensuring all students feel a sense of belonging at school is essential to their success in the classroom and beyond. In reviewing the recent feedback on this draft focus area, we saw the need to clarify how social and emotional learning support will be enhanced, but not at the cost of high expectations in core academic learning. Therefore, we updated the goals to better identify how we will balance these 2 important aspects of the learning journey. First, to remove barriers to student and parent engagement in the 4 A's, academics, athletics, arts, and activities by providing more equitable access. We know that we need to identify and address the barriers faced by our students and families that limit their engagement in our schools. By focusing on what is preventing their involvement, we will be able to open doors for students and create pathways for families to be better able to support their student throughout high school. Second, a strong district-wide relationship between Glenbrook North, Glenbrook South, Glenbrook off-campus, and Glenbrook administration will be developed to foster collaboration, partnership, and coordination of experiences. We recognize and honor the need for each school to have its own identity, and we need to create more opportunities for staff to work across schools and ensure that each student, no matter which school or program they attend, receives a high-quality Glenbrook education. By encouraging more collaboration between the schools, as well as between the schools and the administration, we will be able to deliver a solid, comprehensive learning experience for future Glenbrook students.
To specifically address the issues of belonging in the Glenbrook community, we updated 3 additional goals. Creating a culture of meaningful relationships that respects, understands, and values diverse perspectives, abilities, and experiences as they impact the Glenbrooks. Here we addressed concerns that express how not all students feel welcomed and included in the Glenbrook community. To remedy the issue, we focus on the importance of building relationships between students and adults in the building, as well as between students. Students, including myself, want to see a bigger understanding of different perspectives, abilities, and backgrounds that will increase the sense of belonging that will in turn allow students to better focus on their learning. District core values will be integrated in the daily work of and exemplified by all members of the Glenbrook community by focusing on values that are shared and promoted throughout the district, not just at one school or at the other. Students, staffs, and families will be more united in what makes us the Glenbrooks. The Glenbrooks will recruit and retain a high-quality, diverse, and inclusive staff reflective of the students and families. In the engagements last fall and again in March, we heard the need for the Glenbrooks to continue their efforts in recruiting and retaining high-quality staff that are more reflective of the people in the community. As a student, I can validate how the impact of feeling respected and valued for who I am and the contributions I bring are important in the community. This focus on building relationships and honoring all voices will help ensure a welcoming and inclusive environment for all members of our district community. And I would like to invite Madeline to speak about Strategic Area Focus 3. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Madeline Hoffman, and I'm currently a senior at GBN. I was honored to be a part of this project that will hopefully help our schools keep improving, even as I move towards post-secondary experiences. Mr. Shaw and I will be presenting Strategic Focus Area 3, Reimagining the Glenbrook Classroom Experience.
Thanks, Madeline. And thank you, since you still actually have an AP exam to do, for being here tonight. My name is Shreya Shah. I am a parent of two girls, one Chandani Shah, who's a freshman at GBN, and Layla Shah, who's a middle schooler in District 30. Currently, I'm a healthcare technology executive and very grateful to have been part of this entire process and be presenting up here with Madeline tonight. In reviewing the data and comments from our community, it became clear to the team that there is a desire for a more personalized systems and structures to ensure that each student can grow and thrive during their time in the Glenbrooks classroom and beyond. To that end, the team refined goals in this focus area to ensure teachers and staff who are in the room have the training and support they need to support students. Specifically, we wanted to create dedicated time with those support systems to further enable education of the whole student. There were many multiple discussions and comments around the ways to ensure students receive the social, emotional, and academic support required to thrive. We discussed things such as advisories, classes, and or after school activities. The goal stresses the importance of exploring multiple ways to deliver this learning, including dedicated times during and outside of the school day. Another goal the team recognized was the importance of the intersection between student engagement in their learning and the essential life skills needed for their future. The district will continue to provide professional development for teachers and staff on effective strategies to increase student engagement, resulting in classroom conversations that allow for diverse perspectives, promotion of critical thinking and collaboration, emotional intelligence growth, and the development of resiliency skills, allowing students to work through and learn from their setbacks.
This focus area includes goals that may seem similar to some you saw in Focus Area 1. For example, the Glenbrooks will assist students in developing flexible education and post-high school roadmaps that encourage exploration of goals and interests. This is similar to one of the goals about dynamic plans in Focus Area 1. The difference here is that this goal reflects how the district will assist and encourage students to explore new interests and have flexible plans that allow for new learning. The goal in Focus Area 1 is more about empowering students to take ownership of their learning. Another implementation we recommend is common expectations of when, how, and what technology and devices will be allowed. The purpose here is to recognize that technology continues to evolve and students need to know how to use these new tools and systems. Schools need to help them learn essential technology literacy skills, safety, and appropriate use. In addition, there needs to be consistent implementation of district and school technology expectations. Also relating to technology, district technology and communication platforms will be simplified and improved in order to enhance their understanding and navigation, and to maximize user effectiveness for parents and staff. We need to look at ways to streamline district communications so that everyone gets the information they need to actively participate and engage in District 225. By focusing on ways to think differently about the classroom experience, students will have access to new and enhanced learning that better prepares them for their future. Thank you, and next I will invite Mrs. Ingersoll to present Focus Area 4.
Good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Johns. My name is Mindy Ingersoll, and I'm a CTE teacher at GBN. I'm also a proud parent of a freshman at GBN. I'm here with Dr. Barb Georges, GBS principal, to present to you the strategic direction number 4, developing leaders throughout District 225.
Thank you, Mindy. As Leif Erikson once said, we are all leaders, whether we want to be or not, because someone is always watching that we're influencing. It is important that every member of District 225, our students, faculty, staff, and administrators, are all offered the opportunity to develop and nurture their own leadership growth, and that we support each other in that process. So to accomplish this, we identified 4 key goal areas. The first one is that standards for timely communication between leadership, staff, students, and the community will be evaluated and updated. While we often focus on strategies to enhance communication between administration and staff, we also understand that effective and timely communication is critical between teachers and families, as well as between staff and students. Similarly, we highlight the importance of strong communication between the district and our community as well. The second goal is that feedback strategies and data should be consistently utilized to provide transparency and engage staff in decision-making processes. Here we highlight the need for consistent and ongoing engagement of staff in district decisions, including clarity about how feedback will inform those decisions and what decisions are currently under consideration.
2 additional goals were included in this focus area. First, a culture of trust and values. All input and perspectives will be enhanced and nurtured. Building leadership capacity requires trust, and we believe by highlighting the importance of valuing diverse perspectives and input, we'll build that trust, which in turn will encourage individuals to take on leadership roles. Professional development and other growth opportunities will be provided for all staff to help them gain experiences that will allow them to expand into their new roles. And that is our 4th objective here. In an effort to grow leadership among staff, the district should explore and implement learning opportunities to grow its workforce and develop leaders at all levels. Having an understanding that all of us can be leaders in our own way is encouraging and speaks to the district's commitment to the learning and growth of its educational community. Thank you.
I feel like we should give them a round of applause because as you can see, the teams were just awesome, and it's so great to hear all those voices. So now we're going to move to those other plan elements. We talk about the root and the root or root, depending on what part of the country you're from, the roots of the tree and the trunk of the tree. So once strategic focus areas and outcome goals were established, the district teams reviewed the other key elements of a strategic plan. Based on what we heard in the first round of engagements and throughout the initial meetings of the core planning team and design team back in February, as well as a review of the district's brand expression and communication, CISO Communications drafted some options for the district values, mission, and vision. Sometimes strategic planning processes start with the mission and then build other elements from there. The reason we believe that in starting with the strategic framework, that means that you can identify where you hope to go and what is blocking you from getting there today. Once that's established, then we work with the clients to see if current values, mission, vision are still relevant or if they need to be updated. Noting that the original values, that which you then called core beliefs, and mission statement were last revised in 2002 per your policy 130. Little time ago. It became apparent that these key strategic elements needed to maybe have a refresh. CISO Communications created initial drafts of these elements based on what we had heard from the community and discussions from those core planning team and design team discussions. They then presented us with feedback at that meeting on April 2nd, which allowed the internal writing team to continue to update for the presentation tonight. I'm going to start with the core values. As we said, those are the roots of any strategic plan, and it really is about who you are and what you offer. So an organizational value statements are an organizational's core values are the deeply ingrained principles that guide all of your actions. Your core values express what you stand for, what you believe in, and what is closest to your heart. And quite honestly, these shouldn't change every time you do a new plan. I mean, they are organizational and they're a little bit more institutional. Although when we looked back at the 2002 one, we felt like there was some updating that we could do. However, you'll see that how we present it tonight, the current core beliefs and the proposed core values, you'll see kind of the transition between them. We also proposed changing the name from core beliefs to core values. A lot of recent research around values and beliefs has been conducted, and we subscribe to the following difference as described by renowned author and organizational psychologist Adam Grant. He says, beliefs are what you think is true, whereas values are what you think is important. When you start to base your identity, your sense of self, your ego, your self-worth on what you think is true, then you're admitting, when you have to admit that you're wrong, it's a major threat to your organization. Whereas when you start to see yourself or your organization who values, fill in the blank, you're now changing your mind is a moment of growth, and that's what we want to have as growth opportunities. It's more important to focus on getting it right than being right. Therefore, we believe that this correlates well to an organization's strategic plan, which needs to be rooted in values, but is also adaptive to current pressures and circumstances. As you think about strategic plans that were perhaps created in 2019, pre-pandemic, the plans that were not adaptive basically went out the window. Those plans that were rooted in strong core values were able to flex while staying true to who they are as an organization. So you'll see how we have adapted those beliefs into core values. The learning, we still believe that there is a strong value of learning in this community. We updated the language a little bit to be more relevant to 2024 and beyond. Community, we took that original core belief and made that into a value of belonging. You heard that throughout the strategic planning, why belonging was so important for our students and our families and our staff. The quality value core belief that you originally had, we sort of put that into two perspectives. One about respect, about how all members are treated with dignity, civility, compassion, and honesty, and that we're really valuing different perspectives. And then there's also a sense of responsibility. So then really making sure that students and staff have that responsibility to contribute meaningfully to their world and to be accountable for their words and actions. Finally, we felt it was very important to bring in that value of well-being, knowing so all the pressures that our students are under, our families, everything that's going on, the tragedy that you are dealing with currently. We believe that a holistic well-being of our students when recognizing their success extends beyond academic achievement. We are committed to cultivating environments that nurture the resilience, foster confidence, and instill grit in our students. And that's why we felt it was really important to make sure that well-being was one of your core values. Carol's going to talk about the mission and vision statement update.
During the first round of focus group engagement, we asked participants to give us an idea of what the original mission statement meant to them. Most of them had never seen this. And for the ones that had seen it or were familiar with it, they reflected that the language was really very dated. So what is a mission statement? The mission statement communicates what you do daily as an organization in response to your values, the values that Susan just went over. So given the values that we shared, we worked really hard as a team to craft a mission that upheld these values and conveys the core purpose of a public school district, educating students, and specific to Glenbrook District 225, educating high school students. But a mission statement needs to be more unique than we educate students. It needs to be aligned with the district's brand and should be relevant, accessible, and something which all members of the community can see applies to them. So you can see our current mission statement, and you can see our proposed mission statement of we are the Glenbrooks, a nurturing, student-centered high school community offering relevant, engaging, and authentic learning opportunities that enable each individual to demonstrate purpose and impact through their own voice and path. And then from the mission, we moved on to a vision statement. The vision statement really uses that aspirational language to communicate the purpose and express the change that you mean to affect in the world. It should be just beyond our reach, but something to which we can aspire. It's aligned with the strategic plan that is about improvement, change, and growth. It's what we want the district to be in the future and what impact the district will have on those that it serves. District 225 can boast many amazing alumni who are impacting the world around them in their local communities, their professions, their families, and across the globe. We work to craft a vision statement that showcases what future students will experience in the Glenbrooks and how they can use the skills and attributes they gain here while they are in our care to further their passion and make a positive contribution wherever they may go. So our proposed vision statement is, we will broaden the conventional definition and expression of success, empowering each learner to showcase their knowledge, skills, and abilities, and envision a path toward positively influencing our community and their world. Susan is going to talk a little bit about our next steps.
There you see your proposed plan as the community has helped develop. As previously shared, specific actions and performance indicators will come after you, the Board of Education, approves that plan will potentially on the 28th. Once approved, we'll create a public document of the strategic plan to include the development process, overarching statement, strategic focus areas and goals, mission, vision, and values, as well as a glossary of key terms so that the language is accessible to all. We know that sometimes we use language in plans that either can come across as jargon or can be interpreted in a variety of different ways. By defining what we mean by that, what this district means by some of those terms, we haven't identified all of those terms yet. We just know that many of them kind of came up throughout the process, so that we want to make sure that it'll be there. This product, we will make sure that it's available in English and Spanish, Korean, Mongolian, and whatever other languages we need to do. We're also working on a sub-brand of the strategic plan so that when initiatives or stories or events happen that are related to things in the strategic plan, it will have a recognizable connection to it so that the strategic plan doesn't become this piece of paper somewhere or on a poster somewhere. We really want it to be living. District leaders will convene this summer to establish the actions which will identify individuals responsible for overseeing implementation, as well as metrics that will help track progress and indicate when adjustments need to be made. Once the overall district action plan is identified, additional parties will likely be brought in to establish specific actions and to collaborate with those most directly impacted by these actions and decisions. We also encourage regular updates on the plan progress to be shared with the board and community. A lot of community voice went into the development of the strategic plan. Your community is clearly invested in this plan, and it is critical to its success to keep them involved and engaged. And with that, we will open it for board discussion and see if there's any revisions or changes we should be making before we bring it for action.
So thank you very much, all of you, again, for all of this effort and this thoughtful presentation tonight. Before we move to board discussion, Dr. Johns, anything else you want to add at this point?
I've been in education for well over 3 decades now and worked under numerous strategic plans. I think it's noteworthy that our speakers this evening who shared the components of the strategic plan spoke so with enthusiasm, with some excitement. They did a lot of work and they were proud to come here and show the product of their work. And I'm really grateful for that. And it got me excited hearing it all over again. So thank you for that. I'm glad to hear that we have the transcripts of this because you added some really important clarifications. I'm glad that we can use that when we meet this summer with administrators to pass that along because I think it helped captures the intent of many of the components of this particular plan. I'm very proud of this work. I'm very proud of the people who are part of this work. I do believe this sets our district on the course to continue to be excellent for decades to come. And I'm glad to be a part of this work and very, very grateful for everyone involved, from leadership all the way to those who spent a lot of time in this little room together, because this is just a portion of the people. It felt crowded at times, but they suffered through it and really put together some good work for our district. And I think we're fortunate to have certainly people that show us why we're proud of the Glenbrooks, that this level of thinking, this level of work, and the collaboration that they went through really shows how great this district is, the support for its future is, and it is a reason we should all be proud to be a part of this district. So that is it, Mr. Dowdy. We're open for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Johns. I have a couple points myself, but I want to open this first to my colleagues. Ms. Seguin, do you have any comments or questions at this point?
I guess, I mean, first of all, it's wonderful work, and I think we're all so happy that the process is getting close to completion. I remember our first meeting about this many months ago, so it's great to see all of this. I am processing a lot of it because I know there's a lot of information that you gave tonight. Just one thing that kind of stood out for me, and maybe we'll have more details on this, but I think it was under the focus area 2. I think you had talked about some stakeholders feel like they are prevented, I don't know if that was the word you used, but prevented from accomplishing certain, goals or things, accessibility, in the school district. And I'm just curious if you can give some details on that. I think it was focus area 2 that talked about it.
Yes, we did identify, the teams did identify some equity and access barriers, I think was probably what you heard, if I'm zeroing in on what you were talking about. And I think that was really coming from that there's differences of maybe what's preventing them. Sometimes they're logistical kinds of things. And so that could be just a straight access barrier. Maybe I don't have the money for this event, or I don't have transportation or things. So sometimes there's barriers that are preventing the connections and the relationships there. There's also some barriers that come out that are more policy or system or systemic kinds of issues that we need to consider and identify if that's what's preventing them.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that gets to your question, but that's.
And I think, maybe when we see some of the detail more later on, when you're going to, provide that to us, some of those details, I may have some more questions. Because I think all of this is at a fairly high level. It's all great, but I don't think we necessarily have insight into what built all of this. So I may have more questions, after we see some of the detail on it. But that just kind of struck me about how people would be prevented or how there are barriers.
Yes, and I would say that I think that definitely comes out in the how part, which is that action plan, implementation planning, where it's intended to be very high level so that it allows us to really dig in and go, okay, so what exactly are we talking about? We know that some people are prevented from participating. So I think the key takeaway from that is just making sure we're identifying why that participation or involvement is being impacted. And is there anything the district can do to reconcile that?
Okay. And then one second question on the mission and vision statement, was that written in collaboration with the students, the parents, and the staff all together?
The actual writing of it, we took all of that feedback from the engagements last fall, from the team's work in February, from the engagements again in the spring of just what is it that they believe that the district's mission is about. Then an internal writing team worked on the actual wordsmithing, because wordsmithing with lots and lots of people is very challenging.
Yeah. And has everyone seen that? Has everyone seen the final product of that?
On April 2nd, the core planning team and the design team saw the drafts, and whether or not yes, they did. You shared that. I was going to say that, and they provided feedback to it. Yes.
Oh, okay. So that was seen by the staff as well.
If they were part of the core planning team or the design team.
They were.
On
Okay.
cabinet.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Steinberg?
Thank you. First, I'll echo the two comments. This seems to be like a lot of work and a lot of collaboration, which is important. And it's great that some of you had AP exams and still made it today here. So, thank you for taking your time for us. And I just have only one comment, and maybe different point of view. Everything seems to be great overall. mission and vision. The latest part is the first time I'm seeing it, so same way I would like to see it more. One thing that maybe on my view it's missing, although it's hard to say something is missing, it's such a comprehensive plan, right? But when I see who comes to our district, when you go to activities, when you go to different things, you see that this district has like two different groups of people. We have people that their parents have come to the district, so traditionally people who want to stay or come back and be part of this. And at the same time, you see a lot of people that made the effort to move to the district. And that's reflected on nationalities. You mentioned you want to publish this in different languages, acknowledging that there are other people that want to come to the district. So it sounds great to say we want to serve everybody, but it seems like it's missing that we are a destination district that is trying to serve everybody intentionally. That there's a reason that many families that speak different languages or that economically may not be able to afford living in this district, and they still make an effort so their children come here, not just because we are excellent in education, but because we strive to make them feel well. And I don't know, I know, some of the words lately are politically charged and people are more sensitive on what to put or not to put. But we are a district that makes the students feel part of the district, not just simply sense of belonging. There's a reason that people move to this district. And I feel that we are shorting ourselves out if we don't put it loud, front and center. We're not a community that is close, that it says, hey, we achieved something and we want to keep it to ourselves. We're a community that we want to share. And there's a reason that people move here. So again, I don't know where, but I think we're shorting ourselves, but not putting it out loud. Especially, we are the district, we are far from the city, it's a nice thing to say somehow, somewhere, at least in my point of view.
Thank you, Dr. Steinberg. Ms. Mullenbeck?
This was terrific to hear from everyone, to read through this. And just listening to all of it, I hear echoes of things that we've talked about for a long time. And I know that was a big project, pulling together, all of the different, the culture survey, all the different things that the district has done to try to get a read on what people like and what people think we can do better. To see all of that now in this document is really helpful. It's kind of funny how you said that you were going to have a glossary, which I think is a great idea, because as I was listening to this, I was thinking it was not very jargony. It really does. Much of it just sounds like plain English that is easy to understand. And I think that is difficult to achieve when you're talking about lofty goals and aspirational things and very high level concepts. So, I commend you for, and also when you have that many people involved to come down to that kind of, just core language. It's a tough thing to do. So I appreciate that. A couple of things. The values, mission, and vision were not in the memo that we received, correct? And I'm sorry, I have 53-year-old eyes. I cannot read any of those words. So I would really like to take a good look at those. Because I think that they are crucial. So I'm not sure how we get our hands on those exactly.
We need to have
apologize for
this.
that. We will absolutely get those to you. Yes.
And I what I heard sounded great, but I can't write that fast. So I did want to also make a point about with next steps. And I think this goes a little bit to what Ms. Seguin was saying, is absolutely, we have this wonderful plan. We've been able to articulate these things that are important to us and that we are striving for. And I think that we just have to keep bringing everything we do in the next 3 to 5 years home to that document. Have under each of these, I think you referred to it as bands. So you can say, we've funded this project. And the reason why is that we can tie it back to goal 4 of focus area 3 or whatever. So, and that really, I think, will help ground us and keep us accountable. So I'm looking forward to that work, seeing how we get down to the nitty gritty of taking these lofty goals and actually grounding them in actions that then we can look and see, did it work? Maybe sometimes you think, this is a great idea. And then you look at it and you're like, actually, that didn't move the needle. So let's try something else. But overall, I really think this is just terrific. I think, I am just so grateful that we have so many people who are willing to put in so much time and effort to come up with this for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Hara?
I want to echo, obviously, it's a lot of work you guys put in and I mean, the devil is always going to be in the details though, once we get it moving, right? And I think one of the things I'd like to see long-term with the plan is something that the military do where you have an overall objective, but you don't like give people standard orders for everybody. The teachers are allowed to figure out how to get there themselves with the class. And I hope we break it down that way. I don't know if you guys have ever done some work on that, as opposed to having, if you have this big plan that's just overarching, and you don't allow people to make decisions under it. The plan is the overall goal, but the individual teachers and the individual people at the points of contact make the decisions as it happens. And I think it's we have to break it down that way when we do it, because that'll be part of that'll be how you make the plan live, is when the teachers can make decisions to go that way themselves, if that makes sense to you. And it's something I hope we do, and I'll make sure I follow up, make sure we do that.
Thank you.
And I would like to obviously get the slides too, because it was hard to review from here. so.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Mr. Galecki?
Well, kudos to everyone that was involved in this. I know this has been, for many of you, a labor of love to donate and volunteer your time to put this together and everything. So I appreciate the community, staff and students working on this all together and with your leadership, Ms. Smith. The question that I had going kind of back to the values and beliefs, I echo my colleagues' comments about getting the additional materials so we could go through this, but the beliefs have served us well in the past, and I know we're doing this so we stay at the top of our game and keep growing. But I was wrestling with, under quality, how there's a fulfillment of expectation that was kind of referenced there in the
You
first
can
line.
read that? That's awesome. I'm impressed, Mr. Galecki. Apologize, but I'm
On
impressed.
one, if I get the
Show off.
lenses
Ms.
just
Nolan
right.
and I are just shaking our heads.
If I could get the lenses just at the right spot
All
and
right.
stuff. But in terms of the fulfillment of expectations, and we've always had a expectation to thrive for the best, bring out the best in everyone at their level, what's best for them, and adapting, and this flexibility of, which I love hearing in some of the suggestions and everything, the student plans, the way to give them a guide so they can reference back, and like any guide, you're on a journey, you're following along, and it's like, oh wait, that's right, I wanted to stop at that tree, but I walked by it and forgot, and I was like, so excited about going down this path, I forgot to go back, and it's a reference to go and see if that's the right one. And I was wondering, Beck, how the group wrestled with this fulfillment of expectations, that level, transferring those over to respect, responsibility, and well-being. I see what you were trying to do there, but I didn't see that, at least from what I could glance here, that was incorporated, these expectations, that we're going to still expect a high level of commitment from everyone.
I think it's both in the fact that there is that overarching statement that we're going to continue to have those high expectations for academic achievement and for growth. And I think it's also
and just to
included
clarify,
in,
in the
in terms
four
of
A's,
value. Yeah.
in the 4 A's, just so it's not just the academic.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that it's not a direct correlation. Clearly, the community belonging, learning to learning is more of a straight line. This is a little bit different. I think your question about the quality of the fulfillment of expectations is really good. I think that really comes out in some of the strategic directions, particularly the one that we talk about learning a lot and reimagining that classroom experience, and that there will be high expectations. And but I would say that is not directly in the value necessarily. I would agree that doesn't perhaps show up there. I think it's implied in almost all of them, and that the expectations are going to be there, but we can certainly consider how that might be different.
Yeah, and I
for
was
you.
wondering what the group may have considered as they were going through that and kind of deciding not to incorporate that, or I see it sounds like, well, we'll put that in at some other stage of the plan and everything. But I think it's a very important one. Maybe after I see the slides, I could give some more thought and my colleagues and stuff on what that could be, but I want to make sure it goes across, not beyond I guess it's learning in the arts, learning with athletics. It's in all the areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galacki. So I guess to reiterate on making sure that the core beliefs slash now values and mission statement and vision statement, are they going to be incorporated as part of the plan? I mean, some of these things are in policy, and they don't have to be in one place or the other. What's the plan, Ms. Smith?
Right. Well, the plan.
What I mean is what constitutes the plan? I get it. Obviously the slides gave us lots, but is it the slides plus those 3 points? Is it? I'm just asking.
I don't want to speak for this district per se. I would say that generally a strategic plan encompasses all of those.
Yes.
While some of them are in policy, like you have, I think policy 130, that you would then need to consider your policy and revising your policy if
Sure.
that is where you want to go. But generally, we like to include those as part of the overall plan because they are that root, the trunk that really holds up why you're going in the direction.
So Dr. Gorell is really good at developing these short pamphlets for people, ones on the budget. And I mean this in a good way. So if there's one for the plan, would it be with these slides plus
Right,
those
and
3?
and that is
I'm just asking.
And
That's
that's
all.
already in the works.
Yep.
Great. No, that's
And it's
terrific.
going to be translated into Spanish, Korean, Mongolian, and
Yes, it'll
And-
have a takeaway, like
Korean,
there will
thank you.
be, the website will be there, obviously,
Sure.
there'll be a dashboard and things,
That's-
but
no, it's-
there is a takeaway, here's your strategic plan brochure.
No, and what I mean by that is, well, the mechanics are important, is just what when we call a plan, because out of all the details, we can't say that's really the plan,
Right.
that's the implementation, which is fine. So needless to say, we should work out, Dr. John's, a way to get this circulated to the board, these particular slides.
Yes.
And let's not wait for the next packet. As soon
No,
as
no,
they're
no,
ready
we
to be
can-
circulated, let's go ahead and circulate them.
I can send them tonight.
Excellent. And then that'll help us think through things, and whether points like Mr. Galacki, for example, gave or whatever, we can work our way through that. So that's a mechanical thing. I have one other point and one other mechanical thing. There, for 3 of the slides, on the left margin, it says outcome goals. However, on the one that's about the classroom experience, which is 3, it says outcome-oriented goals. And I know that's just my brain doing that, or if that had an intent. It's not a criticism, it's just a question. Is there an intended difference
That
there?
is a Susan Brought typo.
Okay, that's fine.
We originally call them outcome-oriented
Sure.
goals. It just is a mouthful to say, so
Okay.
we just call them outcome goals.
That's totally fine. I just want to know if
Yep.
there was some substantive difference. Okay.
We will
And-
make sure that's corrected before you.
No, no problem at all. And then the last thing is only a substantive point, and I think it's in the first goal area. It's the very first bullet about this dynamic plan, if you can just wander over there, that each student's developing a dynamic plan. I love the concept of teaching students at a young age ownership and accountability. And that's something that we all need in the districts, not just the students, the board does, the administration does, our teachers do, everybody does. But I guess I would like, if possible, and we can think about how to do this, is to make sure that the support's going to be there for the average 14-year-old developing a plan for the next 4 years, because there may be some very precocious 14-year-olds, but I think we want to make sure they're being supported. It's really what's in that second sentence.
Right.
And I'm now going to say it wrong, not eloquently, and this is, very, very well drafted. With the support of, in partnership with supportive counselors and their parents and guardians, each student will develop a plan. And that sounds like a small thing, but I don't want the average 14-year-old to show up in August of their freshman year and say, okay, go develop a plan, which I'm sure that is not your intent, but owning the plan is, and it can be dynamic, it can change over time, you expect it to, and they own it, it's their plan, it's individual, all those things are great. I'll make sure they don't feel like they're just off on their own,
Right.
and they're gonna check in with their counselor in 6 months.
And I think the point that you made about it being a dynamic plan and that it could look completely different
Oh, for-
their
gotcha.
sophomore year, and
Yeah.
it could look completely different when they finally
Of course, yeah.
leave the Glenbrooks. But we also want our students to be thinking about that. We
Right.
want them to be thinking about what that, and we've used plan, we've used pathway, we've used roadmap. So there are a lot of different ways that we can articulate that to our students, that we really want them to be thinking about what their journey in the Glenbrooks is going to be.
All agreed. I just I would just suggest we think of a way maybe to blend the second sentence as a dependent clause to start with the assistance. Just
Got it.
because I think it's important that, because if I, as a parent, I would say I'm a little concerned, even though the goals are incredibly admirable to have accountability and a dynamic plan. I think that's tremendous.
And I think it's important too, as Madeline shared before, about how there is in goal number 3, a similar.
Same
that's there.
concept.
Yep, so just starting with, in partnership with. we will-
Yeah, and so maybe that same
Yep.
concept you can import it up here and then, and it would be consistent. That's my only substantive point I wanted to make on those. So just to refresh us, Ms. Smith, on next steps, we're going to see these other slides and then we're going to, any more feedback, the board, I know Ms. Seguin talked about all of us probably digesting some of this.
Yes.
And then it will come back up as a regular agenda item on the 28th.
On the 28th, correct.
And there'll be further discussion and we can determine at that point with Dr. Johns' help, how we proceed. But we are, on the goal line or darn close on this, which you should all feel very, very proud of. I know that you hear that uniformly across this group. This is an enormous effort by our entire community, which is, part of what we are.
When you start a process like this, and I've done strategic planning in other districts, you cast this wide net
Mhm.
and you ask people to come and participate and you ask people to be engaged in the work. And then you kind of sometimes cross your fingers because life does get in the way. And so I was so pleased and honored to work with this group, the people who are in this room and the people who aren't in this room that are watching, because they were, and I think Dr. John said that in his comments, that there were discussions and there were not really arguments, but debates and challenges. And sometimes it came down to one word.
Yep.
And we really had great discussions and this group of people just leaned in to their, sometimes their differences, and I'm really proud of what we came up with.
It's a
And so I
happy
wanna,
cramped
again,
room, so,
thank them. It was a happy cramped room, but
so-
we fed them.
Food is key to everything, Ms. Smith. Very
Absolutely.
smart. So we know our next steps.
Yes.
Again, thank you all for this. There's a ton of work. And you can go back and study now for your AP.
So we're going to give you a minute or two. We know you have other obligations and we have a heck of a long meeting to go yet. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being here today.
Fortunately, item 8.2 starts with the word accelerated and Placement Act and Glenbrook implementation. So this is 8.2. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I'm going to give a second here. Okay, the Accelerated Placement Act is an Illinois law that was passed a few years ago and is designed to ensure that students have opportunities to participate in suitably rigorous classes. A key component of the act is the notion of automatic acceleration, through which a student who meets state proficiency levels is placed in the next most rigorous course unless the choice is made to opt out. The deadline for implementation is the 25-26 school year, but we needed to make sure that we were prepared by the fall of 2024, since that is when students begin the course registration process. To better understand the law and to address its implementation, the Education Services Department led the working committee and a large number of other staff through the nuts and bolts of the law and determined how 225 would implement it. Their work was exhausting and required untold hours. To give you a sense, there were over 20 people on the working committee alone who met multiple times each month. Nearly weekly, members of the committee and the Director of Teaching and Learning, Ryan Bretag, who's with us this evening, worked with all the instructional leaders, all of student services, a series of working groups of staff from both schools through their learning communities. All of this was done prior to a finalization of a presentation that was made available to staff in mid-April. So a tremendous amount of work. And since then, there was additional clarifications and revisions that were brought forward. So we have in your packet a very comprehensive description of the packet of the program that we're setting forth for the district. I've asked Mr. Bretag, who has really been a champion of this project, to provide you with an update and address any questions that you have. Dr. Dreese, do you have a few additional words before we turn over to Mr. Bretag?
Thank you. I'm incredibly proud of the work the working committee has done under the leadership of Ryan Bretag. His dedication and vision has been inspiring, and I want to highlight the collaborative effort of what it took to come here this evening. It is truly a benchmark for success to move this Acceleration Act forward here to the Glenbrooks. Ryan and I both ensured and continuously checked with the State Board of Education and other districts to learn and share best practices about the implementation of this act, as all districts in the state are challenged and are excited about the implementation. Ryan, please go ahead and give us a quick overview of the law, our implementation in the Glenbrooks, and maybe a tiny little glimpse towards the dynamic plan this might entail.
I get the great excitement, everyone, to give you the State of Illinois strategic plan tonight, which is the Accelerated Placement Act. So just a quick overview of the law. So first and foremost, this law was signed in 2017. It really started with the younger grade levels and the idea of gifted education. In 2021, we saw it really make its way towards the secondary level and what those implications. So while other districts are about a year ahead of us, this 23-24 school year, we will be, as Dr. John said, moving to 25-26 school year. So we have the opportunity to learn a lot along the way. The law itself, first and foremost, the subjects that are directly impacted by this are English, math, science, and social studies. However, our committee, our working committee, was committed to the idea that we are a comprehensive school. So our plan needed to take into account those that were indirectly impacted by this plan as well. Second, the large crux behind this is that we will now use a nationally normed assessment, like the SAT, to determine automatic placement for our students at a high level, or what the state calls the next most rigorous level. So it's a mouthful, but in essence, if a student meets or exceeds on a state test, they are automatically placed in an honors level course. That's the short of it. For us, we said, what would this mean and where do we want to go? So I'm taking hours and hours of work and putting it on one slide for you to try to understand. First, we are taking into account those 4 subject areas, but it's really important that the other 5 are included as well. In particular, our electives. So we wanted to make sure that any movement here honored our electives and continue to support the work going forward. You heard a lot about that in the strategic planning presentation, and I think it's well represented here. Second, the nationally normed assessment that we plan to use is the PSAT that will take place strategically in the fall for our current 8th graders or our rising 8th graders. So, and then PSAT 9, 10 in the subsequent years. It's important to note that we worked deeply with our township to set up that the PSAT 8 will be administered at the middle schools in the fall. Because of the high stakes nature of this assessment, we wanted to make sure we honored their well-being and they were able to take that at their home school. And then that data will come to us for decision-making processes. Third, they are automatically enrolled. What that means is, at first glance, a student is placed in the class, but parents are allowed to opt out. And we have set that up strategically to make that easy for our families in our system called School Links that you approved earlier this year. That will be the tool that we will use that will allow parents to easily see you've been placed here, but you have all these other options. And last but not least, the next most rigorous course. You can imagine this is where we spent most of our time. What does that mean? Where are they going? Where are they automatically placed? I am proud and happy to say the work that was done was really to move the Glenbrooks to the next generation of excellence. And how we plan to do that is by looking at 2 types of honors levels. First and foremost, the current level of honors that we know, the Glenbrook honors, will remain in place, but that will be known as enriched honors. Students still get to those classes based upon our traditional recommendation process. That remains whole. But because the state has essentially normed our honors and has said this is what it means to be honors, you meet standards, you're in honors. We looked and said, well, let's do that. Let's create a state normed honors level known as honors. And that's where our students will go, that meet or exceed standards. So the exciting part about that is truly we talk a lot about our students that have long deserved this recognition, and now we're putting that in place. And so that's really an important piece, but it also shows that we're going to stretch our kids, that we're willing to stretch our kids. We're excited to stretch our kids. And that's what I'm most proud of with this work is this team took on accelerated placement, not just how do we meet this law, but how do we use this to go where we want to go? How do we push the ideas, a lot of which you heard in the strategic planning tonight? Timeline-wise, we are looking right now, there's been deep work on the curriculum to get that ready. Before the ISs depart for the summer, they have committed to having their curriculum updated, course titles, a lot of alignment work going on across Willow Road, and we are approaching almost a 90% alignment at this point in terms of course titles, descriptions, prerequisites. That is a tremendous lift by our teachers, our curriculum teams, and our ISs that has come to fruition. Throughout the summer, that work that they've done will be built into our SchoolLink system that will allow this entire process to be streamlined. When our teachers actually this has started throughout the summer, but into next year, professional development. What does this look like? How do my classes function? What do I need to look at my curriculum? What are the gaps? What are different teaching strategies we might need to think about? How do we bring supports to the students that need them, that are being stretched, that with a little additional support can maintain that level of excellence that they're striving for? That work has begun and will continue more intensely throughout next year. Our families will have direct awareness in the fall of 24. That's my typo. And then we will launch and review in 25, 26. Family awareness. I want to talk just briefly how this is going to go, because what's really important about this is a lot of law and a lot of what does this mean for me? What is the impact that this has on my student, my family, my household? Really outlining our process is this. Step one in the fall will be as they start to work through and we get into late fall, early winter, where they understand what course selection is going to be like. Parents will be notified of two things. The second bullet, they get every year. These are the classes you've been recommended for. This is how we came up with that recommendation. But there will be a new piece that says the APA has also auto-accelerated you here. So they will have two pieces of information in front of them. One, what APA has said they've qualified for, and number two, what we recommend. In many cases, they could be completely aligned. In some cases, it could be we're recommending them for something higher than what APA is saying. Once they have that, our normal process continues. Our student and family will make preliminary course selections. The difference next year will be they'll be doing that digitally in SchoolLinks. So it'll be able to walk them through the process. They'll have more information at their fingertips. But then the student counselor interaction will take place. I want to mention something that was noted in the strategic planning process about the 4-year curriculum, the 4-year process. That is foundational to this work. And that work is well underway already, that we, in partnership with our counselors and our instructional supervisors, how are we educating our students and families the moment they arrive through that 4-year curriculum process? How they make course selections. What does it mean to be in an honors class versus an enriched honors class? How do I get to enriched honors? What if I don't want to take an honors class and I just want to be in college prep? What does that mean? All of that is built into this 4-year planning. So Mr. Dowdy, I loved what you said about that partnership, because that's exactly what we've been emphasizing, that this is not students alone doing this, that it is a complete partnership between our counseling staff and our students, and to that matter, why we brought School Links on, and the families. That closes that important triangle. And then last but not least, they make their final decision on the course selection. So there's a lot of education that will go in, but what's important again to note is for us and our parents, this will become clear as they're going through their individual process with their student. And that will help them really understand. And with the partnership of student services, they can make more informed choices about their student while also understanding what APA brings to them. So that's a lot in a very short period of time, but questions?
So thank you, Mr. Breiteg.
Yes.
And thank you for all of the work that you and so many others have put in over many, many moons on this. This is not easy stuff. And Dr. Dreese as well. Thank you very much for your leadership. Dr. Johns, anything you want to add to this?
Well, I want to thank Mr. Breiteg and Dr. Adrizi for taking such a complicated subject and packaging it into the short packet that's in the board packet and the words this evening. They've done a lot of work collaborating with other districts in the area to see what the different pathways that people are taking on this. Our particular plan is one that many of our the districts who we consider our comparison districts are following a very similar plan. I think at its core, what we'll see through this is students will get recognition for the level of performance that they are performing at relative to their peers in other districts. And I think it will be great for our students. I think that we'll see students GPAs higher. They'll have more esteemed classes on their transcripts. And I think there's more opportunities for them when they leave the school here. What I'm also proud of is how so many things that Mr. Breiteg and Dr. Adrizi are working on all intersect into this, where one project we're working on, for example, School Links, or the work that we're doing on our curriculum work, all intersect together in a cohesive and integrated project. And I appreciate that. That's good work. And it's not minor work. I mean, this is probably decades worth of work that's being done in a year or two. So thank you both for all that. And for the teams that you're leading to make this happen.
Thank you, Dr. Johns. Ms. Mullenbeck, do you have any questions or comments at this point?
I do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
New questions.
New questions.
New questions. One thing I guess I don't understand was, I understand that the law requires 4 subject areas to be dealt with here. But you had talked about how we are going to apply this more broadly.
Yes.
And I guess what I'm not understanding is, what will we use as the PSAT doesn't test you on Spanish or French. So how do we know if we put the student in honors French, right? What are we going to use as the assessment that bumps them?
Yeah,
into
it's
this?
a tremendous question. So we are now having those conversations with the ISs in the other areas, what they will use. But what is really important in that context is 2 things. One, developing their skills continuum. That is going to require them working through their curriculum. That's part of that curriculum guide work we're talking about. And number 2 is this idea that we heard throughout strategic planning. We've had conversations here about pathways, that what ends up happening a lot with our students as they enter honors curriculum, they start to be concerned they can't take anything that's not an honors class, that there's a potential impact there. That is something, when I say we really look to make sure that we maintain the health of our comprehensive nature, that we looked at what will we do for the student that says, I'm thinking about the student in strategic planning that spoke about, I'm in this class and I really would love to take a fine arts, but I don't know what that will do for my GPA, and maybe I need to stay here. What we're talking about is this idea of earned honors or embedded honors, that students will have a chance to take a college prep or regular level class, and through their demonstration of mastery, earn honors credit. That it requires the same skills continuum. How are they going to demonstrate that mastery? But that opens up a whole new world for our students to say, I can stretch myself, I can push myself, I can take that chance as I'm looking at different pathways and say I can go there.
So would that be, I believe like right now in the registration process, you would say, let's say you're taking Latin American studies for
Mhm.
your social studies, you would opt at registration to do the honors level? Is that how that would work?
So we're working through the criteria. The criteria will be completed by October, so I'll be able to share that with you. But the idea is that within a certain window of time, you would make a decision that I am going to take this class for honors. And then you would have a very clear understanding from the teacher and the curricular team what that entails. Doesn't mean more work. It means demonstration of mastery.
And then the last question I had is that we're with the new model, we are going to take that supported studies level and it's going to go away. We're just going to have now the college prep level. So the kids that would typically have been put into the supported studies level are now going to be in the college prep bucket.
Correct.
And it's just, this kind of goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about before with the strategic plan. Just want to make sure that while we're stretching the kids, and I think that's great to give them a little, push to do a little bit more, that they're also getting the support so they can be
Yeah.
successful there. Right?
Absolutely.
So and since if studies is going to be rolled in with the kids who are already, very close to meeting standards, we need to have a spectrum, I guess, of supports for them in there.
Yes, so you can sound the siren jargon alert here. So we say MTSS a lot, which is a multi-tiered system of support. It's similar to what you just said. What are the continuum of supports? What are the different supports we're going to have? We're working night and day to get those aspects into place for that very purpose. As we developed this model, we sat down and said, what percentage of students might be there? Where are their supports coming from? How do we ensure flexibility? And that's the key word, flexibility in our support. So we understand the kids that are in need and how do we get supports to them or get them to the supports so that they can be successful. And while the college prep level is going to merge our traditional supported and standard level, I think it's important to note that we also need supports at that new honors level too. There will be a significant portion of students being stretched into honors for the first time. We know that could come with a feeling that this is the first time I've had a B. What does that mean? So, and that, hey, that's okay. And how do we help assure not only the academic supports, but what we've long talked about, the emotional support, the well-being support, the connections with families about what that now means. So very much thinking about it, but I appreciate the question. It's something that's on our mind quite often. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. O'Hara.
Well, I just got to say, I love it. Something Barb and I had talked about previously. We kind of run two schools at GBS, and we're going to be merging them, which I think will bring everybody's boat up. I think you and I talked about that. So I think this is awesome. I remember having arguments with my daughter about making sure she takes some some electives, but she didn't want to take them because they weren't honors. And you're like, oh my God, we're paying for all these electives and you're not doing any of them. So I think this is awesome. I'm very happy the state for once making us do something that I think is really going to help us move along. One thing occurred to me, for these rising eighth graders, they've actually been under this system for a while now, right? So for them, it isn't really a change.
Correct.
Okay. And in a way, actually, for our freshmen and sophomores, the last 2 years, it's been a change to leave that system.
Correct.
Just curious.
Yep.
Mr. Galecki.
Thank you for all the wonderful work that the team has done in this area and everything. And this, I know, is in interesting times, to say the least, with everything going on and stuff and what this is doing and how we try to stay meeting the expectation standards and everything that the Glenbrooks have been known for, yet also being accommodating to other regulations and things. Quick question for the group. So I don't hear that any grades, and I think you noted in the question, we're not going to be changing any policies in regards to grades, these two different levels of honors being treated differently. It's honors, it's now on a 5-point scale. But are there any other policies that you envision the board's going to have to look at as a result of these changes in the upcoming months?
At this point, there would not be any additional policies that we feel need to be under review, other than obviously the Accelerated Placement Act that is there. But outside of that, as we've talked, the weighted grade at this point will remain honors, being honors, staying at that. We will convene a group to look at it and have those conversations, but we know that that's going to take a deeper look.
And I should broaden that, whether it's policy or the school handbooks, because I know some of it applies in the handbooks and how things are treated there as well too.
Yeah, so some of those things that could come up that are on our list to review, as you broaden that out, what is Glenbrook Scholar? Some of our designations we'll need to talk about, as a lot of, it touches a lot of different areas that we'll have to talk about. So that would be one example.
So there's a list to come. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, there's a list to come that.
Prepared that we're not done and over. with.
Correct.
So the other question I had, or maybe a recommendation, going back to the slide right here, family awareness. I know in our discussions reference, there's also the appeal process here that the Glenbrooks have. I think this would be very timely to include that as well too. We're reinforcing that there's this upfront that we're working with parents, but then as they're going through the assessment, not only do they get and I appreciate that you referenced, there's not only the automatic jump, but recommendations from teachers, their grades and past work may have a jump and they may be actually placed higher or suggested higher. But then there's the appeal process.
Correct.
That I know that we have available to parents and families should they not agree with either of these. This helped us identify we have someone who has test anxiety. We have identified something else that's preventing them from doing well in this area. And so that appeal process and how to go about that, I think if we can reinforce this, leverage this opportunity would be key.
Yeah, I really appreciate that thought. I think that will be an excellent addition into that step 2, so they understand that full process of you're making your preliminary decisions. What happens from here? What are your action steps along the way?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Steinberg.
Thank you. Hey. So I have a few questions. Like everybody said, this is great, and we had the conversation before. I appreciate your time and willingness to answer some of the questions. I'll start with kind of a different question. What's the impact on curriculum development here? Because I'll take this as a face value. What used to be whatever, English 1 honors, I'm assuming it's going to be the same English 1 honors that it was last year or this year. So what is the impact on the English 1 enriched honors? How, both from the point of view of teachers having to go back to the drawing board, is this change of curriculum? Is this more activities? Is this more requirements? Is this grading differently? And the second part of that question is, if one of those answers is, yes, we're going to change the curriculum, it's like, are we going out of bounds in terms of curriculum standard and across the state? in terms of what is the meaning of having an honors course. In terms of what content is there, I think when we met, I made the comment, I'm not going to teach more in Calculus 1 because then I'm stepping into Calculus 2. And if now my Enriched Calculus 1 teaches Calculus 2, what does Enriched Calculus 2 teach? So I'm sorry, too many things on the same question, but what's the impact on curriculum?
So the number one impact for us with this is truly defining what does college prep mean, what does honors mean, and what does enriched honors mean on a broad scale. And what's important to that is, Matt said it best when he was talking about strategic planning. We're giving these parameters and then we're handing it to the teachers to say, now here's the structures you have. Are your courses working within those? Develop that out. We believe, and that was the idea of the curriculum work that's been going on, we're much more aligned than we thought. Now we can have those conversations about what do those levels actually mean from a rigor, from a pacing, from the depth of knowledge question sets that are coming forward. Will there be gaps? Absolutely, because our teachers are phenomenal. They're going to find gaps and they're going to say, ooh, now that I have a new framework to look at, I see this. But that's natural. That's part of our curriculum and improvement process. I fully expect you will hear for the next 3 years the curriculum improvement process updates, all the curriculum adjustments that have come because of APA. But the beautiful thing is our people work not only vertically, 9th grade, 10th grade, they work across what are all the courses in our discipline horizontally so that they can say, what's actually, are we making sure the kids are getting the right skills so when they go to 10th grade, regardless of where they were at, that's in place. So short answer, it's really that umbrella concept of what are the buckets we're now operating in and what are those parameters, and that's where the curriculum work is taking place. That's the jumping off point.
Good, thank you. The second and third question go together, and I'm sorry, you wanted to say something? This is more back to well-being and well-being of our students and our families and everybody. I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier. First of all, in terms of messaging and working with students, my soft take on this whole thing is it's an acknowledgement of the state that the levels of each high school are different. So the capabilities of some students are different. Now, how you translate that message into a student that you are telling him or her, hey, now you're going to take 5 honors courses. And it's like, you are not, these courses were there before. Whatever the system worked before, they opened the door for you. Don't think about this about being an extra burden on you. It's just it's like, it's the worst comparison I'm going to make today probably, but it's like you were supposed to play on the varsity team and for whatever reason there was no room on the team and now you're playing on the varsity team. Don't feel that we are pushing you up. We are putting you where you were supposed to be, at least where the state said that you were supposed to be, but multiply that by 5,000 families, people, or
a big team, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a lot of playing time. Yeah.
My point is
it's a whole new league.
Do not get people scared, for the lack of a better word, of taking the class that they're supposed to take on one hand. And on the other hand, in terms of well-being, I've heard many families regarding the academy that they are against their kids going into academy because have different experiences. We want our kid also to have some free time and to have less stress. I wonder if we're gonna do something similar now with the enriched honors. If at the end of the day, I'm getting the same GPA, I'm getting the same honor level on the regular honor level. And nothing against, I'll pick mathematics because it's my field, so people know I have nothing. But maybe I don't need to take calculus enriched honors because calculus honors will do their job. I can still get an A there. And when I go to college, nobody's gonna make a difference if I do the enriched honors or not. And I'm not against the enriched courses for people who want to take enriched courses, but let's not create the system within the system where now everybody, although they get the same GPA, It's like, I don't have a home thing taking a regular honor where my friends are taking the enriched honors. So
So,
again,
let me
Yes.
interrupt. Are you suggesting weighting different enriched?
no, I'm not. I'm
No,
not.
I'm not,
just
I'm
saying-
not
yeah, yeah,
reading
it's a good
question. No, because there are high schools that do
Yeah.
that.
No.
And are you looking at weighting still? I know there's some things about weighting, or is it that,
Yeah, so that
I
was.
didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
not
It's an
to-
important
Oh,
point.
I
though.
can answer both questions because I think
Let
they
me say
play
one more
together.
thing to
Oh,
Yeah.
please do, please do.
Bruce's point. I'm not because I think the state is making, and I cannot pretend to think about how the legislature are thinking, but they are making an effort to recognize. So as a tidbit, if you go to college and you come from a different country, regardless of your GPA, there are a few companies that weight your GPA according to the country you come from. So you can come from a 4.0 from Argentina and a 4.0 from Venezuela, and they won't weight the same. Even if you took the same courses, it's an acknowledgement that the education system may be different. This is what's happening here with high schools. You get the best student, and true individual situations may be different, but you get the best student from a high school that doesn't have the resources, high school A from high school B. The grades may be the same, the courses may be the same, but it's not a guarantee that those students will perform the same. You will have exceptions, but it's not a guarantee because you went through 12 years of a system that was underfunded. So the state is making an effort to say, if you are coming from some districts and your general scores are above something, you deserve to be in an enriched course, or not, sorry, on an honors course. And then we say, okay, but let's grade them differently. Then we basically take a step back from what the state is saying, right? And at the end of the day, in a good way, our high school determines a large part into our educational system. But when you go to any professional, you rarely ask them what high school they went to, right? Or what courses they took on high school. At best, you look at the schools that they went to college. And it's nothing wrong with high school. Without a good high school education, you are not going to get there. But my point is, with that difference between the enriched course or the honors course, or taking that arts course that made a difference because you know how to speak publicly, although you are a doctor or something else. And that's the part where sometimes we get lost into this. We make it into a competition of a grid, check, 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 check. And these are, you said earlier, I think, 14-year-olds to 18-year-olds that deserve to have some time to expand in the other A's and to have friendship and develop something else. So how are we going to work with the messaging? How are we going to work with the families? I'm sure there's going to be a few years where this takes a lot of moving around, but it's important that as a front, we have a unified message so people don't feel cheated either way.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack there, but
Yeah.
There was only a lot of semicolons. It was one sentence.
Sure. The first thing I would say, and I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record on this front, but I believe deeply in it. The ability to have a 4-year curriculum where our students walk in and start to understand what their 4 years could look like, what my interests are, what my paths of passions might be, allows for a deeper conversation with the counselor and the student, the counselor and the families, so that you can start having conversations early. So when those challenging moments arrive where a kid's going, do I take this because it has this title or this, but I'm interested in this? You have something to fall back on. You have, hey, you talked about this your freshman year. Look at what happened your sophomore year. We can look at the data right here. You're on path to go where you want to go in life. And taking this is not going to change that. That's going to be important. We can send 50 emails. We can build pamphlets and booklets about this. But what it's really going to come down to is, this is my son. He's a 16-year-old going into his junior year. What does this mean for him when I'm about to take the courses? We have to put our energies into the people that are working directly with the families and kids at the moment that all this wording matters. And that's where we're going to shine. And I believe that because we've had our counselors involved in this process. Our ISs are despite when we started and we were all going, whoa, there's an energy about what this could mean for the student that you mentioned. At the same time, how do we help a kid go, am I being hurt by this? Because I'm taking all these AP classes, but my GPA is equal to that. That's where we've done work with our college counselors in this process to say, what do colleges look at? What's going to matter? And you compared it to countries, that's what we call our school profile. And our school profile is going to identify, you and I have the same GPA, but here's what represents rigor, what's our most rigorous courses. That's really going to help our universities understand what students chose. So these are very important questions that you're asking, but we're going to have to thread this, not just in this transition moment, but every year. This is a part of a conversation to educate our kids so that their 4-year decision-making is really built for their long-term health and success. That's why I would love the word thriving, concurrent well-being and high performance. That's what our kids, that's what they want.
So I appreciate the answer. I'll echo what one of my colleagues said earlier with the strategic plan with this. In my view, and I don't know if you all share this, is I would love to hear more about the work of the counselors as we move forward.
Yes.
Because they are so critical on this. And we, in the past, we used to see this when our kids went to 11th grade or 12th grade. That's the only time you start paying more attention to it. But now you said it's a 4-year effort. So if we are, I don't want to use the word rethinking because maybe we've already been doing this and some of us are not aware of this. But if we are rethinking the way we do counseling to our students, I would like to hear more progress on that.
So because it was embedded in a 3-hour Ryan Bretag presentation, we are adding the student services team into our curriculum improvement process. So annually, when you hear from the different academic departments, you will also have the student services so that you will understand how their curriculum is evolving, because we've heard that from you, there's that interest, and so we're embedding them in. So next year will be the first year you hear from them.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sigmund?
I have just a few foundational questions that maybe, because I didn't have a chance to set up a separate meeting for you, but this will help me orient things a little bit better. As far as choosing the state, the state test, the PSAT as kind of the guideline, was that something that the state recommended, or was that something that you all kind of said, hey, we have to choose something? Is there anything mandated for that?
No, it's a locally selected. So we had the choice. It had to be nationally normed. So we could have chosen ACT, SAT. We can look at Illinois Assessment of Readiness, which is what our elementary districts use.
Right.
Honestly, most of them are the state assessments. So we chose the PSAT for the reason of, number one, it aligns with our students already taking PSAT 9 and 10 and then the SAT. But it also gave us a real opportunity. We talked a little bit about curricular alignment with our entire township. That the idea that if we offer PSAT 8, now we have an opportunity to really partner with data around a common system of assessments or suite of assessments.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And then, and I may have missed this in the prep memo, but what is the score that you have to achieve to automatically accelerate?
The SAT or College Board sets that benchmark annually, so it changes. What you would look at is meets or exceed. That's why it's often hard to give a number of what we can predict. But as we share annually the Illinois report card and our data, it's anything, if you were to go look at our data, anything that meets or exceeds is the qualification.
For acceleration.
For acceleration.
But that level could change from year to year
And
based
change,
on what
yep.
the College Board standards gives you.
Correct. And we,
Okay.
as a district, we range from near 70 to near 80% meets or exceeds.
Oh, okay. Of all of the students that take it, they fall
Correct.
into that.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot. That's a big percentage. Okay. Because I'm just thinking about.
We should be proud.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking about, all of the nuances that you all have to look at in terms of the curriculum. I mean, I just think that's going to be the most the most challenging part of this whole process is really trying to make the distinction between those different levels. And for such a large group of kids, you know, it's pretty impactful. So, yeah, I can understand that. It's going to be very detail oriented and I guess, has the state provided any guidance around the development of that curriculum, or are there, do you know what I mean? Like, have they given any details, or is it just kind of, you know, here's your guidance and go for it?
Yeah, that's pretty much the depth of their guidance.
Interesting. Wow, it's gonna, you think about all the schools across the state and how
Yeah.
they're gonna be tackling this, it's gonna be very different.
I think to not be so flippant, part of what they talk a lot about is APA wasn't necessarily looking at districts in isolation when they made this choice. So a lot of districts they looked at, you can see the examples, you could auto accelerate the advanced placement or dual credit. So the idea is, well, we can, if we only have 20 to 30% of our kids meeting standards or exceeding standards, maybe we push them to AP and we really try to get them to stretch as far as possible. So if you have that it's not that that is a curriculum built completely, but there's guidance when you have that advanced placement and dual credit kind of structure. So from a state, they're not as focused, in my opinion, on the honor side of the aspect of that.
Okay. And then I kind of, so this, we've talked a lot about as a board, just alternative pathways right after high school. And this may just be terminology, but I know that the other, you know, the other section is called college prep,
Correct.
right? I'm just wondering if we should say college and post-secondary prep or something like that. I don't know if I'm splitting hairs here, but
I had the same thought.
you know, because we've talked so much about, you know, different pathways, and I think there are, you know, students that are pursuing some of those, and I think to our whole kind of well-being and exclusion and inclusivity, I'm just wondering if that has been thought about.
It has been a little bit. There's a couple things. It's a really important question, and we've wrestled with this a lot. What's important is inside of our course guide on a transcript, it doesn't say college prep. It is our understanding of the rigor level, the expectation that when you are a freshman, perhaps you're thinking about an alternative pathway, but we're not limiting you by not preparing you for college. That you are in a position, should you make that choice, whether at 17 or perhaps a little bit later in life, that we have kept that door open for you while also still giving you everything you need for alternative pathways. The second,
That's a good way to describe it.
yeah. And the second piece, we took that, and after many conversations, we spent a lot of time with our college counselors and said, what is from a college and career readiness perspective, what is going to position our students best inside of how we would identify in our school profile? And college prep was the normed terminology across the country right now, that they felt that's the best approach. So
I kind of like college readiness,
college readiness, that's,
you know, rather than prep,
Yeah.
because prep kind of, it almost implies that that's what
Yeah.
you're doing, rather than, I like readiness.
well, maybe we stumbled upon
And I-
something. I'm
like
I'm happy to
that.
bring that back. That there might,
Just saying.
you're not the only, you are honestly, a lot of us have wrestled with that. So
Mhm.
it's a fair point. I like the idea of college readiness and bringing that back as an option that has not been stated.
Yeah.
So since you mentioned at the college level, now we're talking about credential level, because that's what industry and colleges are doing, stack about credentials.
Credentials.
So that's higher than high school. You can take it at any given time, and then colleges will recognize it as credit as well. But if you don't want to have a degree in college, but you want to put 3 courses together in engineering that will help you to become a mechanic or something like that, you will be
Credential
able
prep.
to take those classes and you'll get a credential. You'll get a certificate or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a thought. And then I just want to echo one last thing that Marcella mentioned about the counseling part of it. I've always been an advocate, and I know I've talked with Bruce about this a lot, is that maybe this is an opportunity for us just to look at the general ratio of counselors to students that we have. I know there are state minimums, I understand that, but I just, I know other districts in our area have different ratios on the counselors to the students, but I don't know, I'm just putting that out there that maybe this is an opportunity to take a look at that again.
What could be blended with the strategic planning when we're talking
Yep.
about engaging
Yeah.
folks from day one
Yeah.
at that level.
And that has been feedback to me from parents and families too, when I talk to them. That's one thing I think some of them just kind of scratch their head at when they hear, the ratio of students to a counselor. It's kind of like, wow, that's a lot.
Is it still 250? Is that the rough number?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, thank you very
No,
much.
thank you.
Okay, live from the Zoom link, Mr. Shine, muted by technology, however, they work around by going to Dr. Gravel. I will read his question. Why would we test a student post-freshman, I'll add year, if they successfully complete the work at a given level as a freshman? For example, a student is in advanced honors, earns an A or B, isn't that enough to place them in the sophomore course, I assume enriched? And then he adds, there seems to be too much high stakes testing, and this pushes against our goal of reducing students' stress, which I know is one thing that struck me.
So we currently, each year, we offer the PSAT 9 to our freshmen, our PSAT 10 to sophomores. So we're not increasing our testing at that point. That's first and foremost. Our 8th graders obviously need to have that assessment done in the fall so that we can use that data for their placement for their freshman year. And because of registration, it actually is their sophomore year as well. So the freshman exam, PSAT 9, that is taking place in the spring, that will serve to accelerate their junior year. In the scenario that Skip was presenting, the idea that if someone were to not meet or exceed standards their freshman year, but had been auto-accelerated and succeeding their freshman sophomore year, the recommendation process would assure that that kid's going to maintain their honors level of work.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Mr. Shine, I know you can hear us. If there's a follow-up, if you would just text the follow-up to Dr. Gravel, we're more than happy to add that.
I was going to say, I
Go
think
ahead,
I
Mr.
understood the
Blackie.
question as, or maybe this is a derivative of it. If the person had, based on that PSAT 9, got into the honors track, with what would be the purpose of them taking a PSAT 10 the following year? Because they're already on that track.
We already do that. Before APA, we have been doing that since SAT has been brought forward. We use that for our own data to understand progress within our curriculum. The kids use that data to understand their progress towards the SAT their junior year. So that's not a new
But
practice.
that
I
won't change
apologize.
the process. The test doesn't work the other way, I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
The committee's very clear, we don't want to use a test to punish a kid. That's why our process continues to note that that's new, but our recommendation process still holds true.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, the family awareness piece, which you've mentioned, could not be more important. That communication will be one of the more important ones, I think, in the next year. I'm probably telling you something you might be aware of. But it's because it could create confusion, et cetera, and that's not the intent. And so as by way of example, I'm not suggesting this, the fact that you were able to boil Mr. Breitag a lot of information, a 3-hour Ryan Breitag special, down to slides with, larger font, et cetera. But that kind of simplicity is going to be really important to be clear, because we have an extremely bright, capable, engaged community, and they will want to understand.
Yes.
As you well know, and it's a wonderful thing that we have. The second thing I have, just so I understand, if you meet or exceed, you're accelerated.
Correct.
Okay. So say I go from what's now called standard, and the 70 or 80% meet or exceed, suddenly they're in what we now call honors. And then take another test, and now they're in honors, and they meet or exceed again. Do they automatically go to enriched, or is that entirely controlled by us?
It's controlled by the recommendation process.
So the next most rigorous is only a one-step process.
Correct.
And is that compliant with the law?
It is. So our next most rigorous, the way we're using it is as long as there is a place to accelerate from. That's why there's always a college prep. To give you a real tangible example, freshman year, we have a world history honors, and a world history enriched honors. If a student is accelerated, they would go from world history to world history honors.
Okay.
Okay. If we didn't have a world history, let's say we only had world history honors and world history enriched honors, then they would auto accelerate to the highest level. That's why there remains 3 buckets. We don't, each year, they don't just keep accelerating across.
And that's compliant.
Correct. That's double.
It's just a one-time shot.
Yep.
And what if you're in honors now and you meet or exceed? Do you get bumped in enriched honors?
No, you're already in honors. You've already been accelerated.
Okay.
Yep. So the state.
No, I'm not
doesn't-
going to try to decipher the law. If that's
Yep.
the understanding, that's
And there's
fine.
different interpretations. It's up to a local interpretation of that, which is that you are auto accelerated to honors level work.
And we're going to collapse the supported level
Mm-hmm.
into what we're now going to call college readiness or college prep or X. And
That one's taken.
I sense I'm calling the committee back together.
outstanding. And the students who are now in what we call standard, who don't meet or exceed, will stay in college prep.
Correct.
Okay. And this goes to this gap closure. Do we have presently the support, if we had to implement this tomorrow, assuming the rest of your magic has been executed, would we have the supports in place so those students who are now in intro or G studies, for instance, I think it's on here, could be in the same classroom and succeed the way that the students who are standard but may not meet or exceed succeed? Or is there going to be, can we close that gap with our present staffing? Are we going to need to hire, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's expensive if we have to hire, say, 50 new IAs.
It is expensive. At this point, what I would say, that's why we're trying to move to a flexible model of support. And by that, in the simplest of terms, instead of saying this particular person is dedicated to this class for an entire year, an IA, where can that IA go based upon the needs of students in the moment?
Wow.
That is going to require a lot of flexibility, a lot of work during our sectioning, a lot of work in terms of our MTSS coordinators, and we're establishing that. Could we start that right now today? I would say the answer is no.
And
I
know we've got some runway here.
Yep, that's why we're.
But as we're doing this, I assume you already thought of this. We want to make sure that we're bringing in finance, as well as just finding people. The IAs are not super easy to find from my understanding. And I'm all for giving kids support and allowing them to grow, and because every student has a different level of excellence and success, which we've talked about earlier.
Yep.
But it seems critical that we also bring in that reality. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't invest in that. And part of it's legally required, but last thing you want to do is move a kid into something that's more rigorous and the student starts to fail and then starts to shut down in terms of academics.
Correct.
The last thing, of course, we all want.
Correct.
So I think we just need to continue to engage on that. You already have an enormous amount on your plate doing this with your team, but there's a whole nother angle to hiring, which is an HR function as well as the finance. So I just, that there's something to keep in mind as you proceed with this already very complex process. Have you mapped curricularly, and this goes to what maybe Dr. Steinberg said, if I were in a standard now and I got plunked into the new honors, is it essentially the same course, or is it what we call honors now?
Yeah, so
You understand where I'm going with this?
I do. It's the question, did we just move buckets?
And that's not a cynical question.
No,
It's
no,
because
I hear you.
it goes to A, the stress of students.
Yep.
B, this possibility of even at this level, a success challenge, which will, concern both students and parents. And third, of course, very importantly, to our teachers, if they have to make major curricular changes. I'm a teacher who has 5 standard level classes in Spanish or whatever, and now I'm going to have all these kids to 70-80%. And do I have to change my curriculum? And that's a huge burden on our teachers. Again, I don't know what the right answer is, but just curious what your thoughts.
No, I think this is not a short-term plan.
Okay.
The idea is that I like to say we're trying to shade the buckets instead of like we just moved them over. It's how are they starting to blend together more? That's if Accelerated Placement Act wasn't happening right now, and we were doing that out of our own interest, we would never just uplift and say, blow it all up, start in 6 months to a year, do it. We just couldn't do it. It wouldn't be healthy for our students nor for our teachers. So what we've been focused on is, yes, right now, for some departments who are looking and saying, where's our readiness level? It perhaps feels more like we just moved the buckets over. So what honors feels like is what standards felt like this year. So, and the idea here is, as we did our work, our standard level curriculum was honors by all state standards.
Which is what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Because, and so you're giving the credit, the title to it, it helps students, et cetera, helps
Correct.
GPAs, helps with college. I get all that.
Yep.
And it's not meant cynically that you're just relabeling stuff. But I hope we're doing the balance, which I'm sure you're very sensitive to, is because if you are actually upping the rigor, that's a big deal to the teachers as well as to the
Correct.
students and to the families. There's no easy answer to that, but I'm just trying to, if the intent is more to get more credit, and maybe it's both. And that's what I'm struggling with, because I am concerned about increasing stress on students and vicariously onto the families, et cetera.
Yeah, I think long-term, each department, and by that I mean social studies at both buildings, working together, saying, where are we? What is our goals? What's our direction? How do we best do this? That's the crux of our work, is really empowering each discipline at both buildings, working for alignment. How do we do this? And we do this thoughtfully. For instance, there are some departments you can say our English department at the senior level has a different level of readiness to make that jump. As you heard in their curriculum improvement process, that a dual credit English 101 course, we can accelerate students in there. This is ideal. They're ready, but maybe they're not ready to make that blurring of the levels at the freshman year. So they're just moving the buckets. So I think it's a great question, but it's more of I think what you're saying, and we're in agreement that it's a long-term work in progress, that the departments have to really weigh in on their readiness to do this for the benefit of the students.
Let me get you in 1 sec. Just one
Yeah.
thing to add to that is, well, it's a long term, and I understand that over time, and this discussion 2 years from now is different, which is fine. Our community, our parents, our students will not wait 2 years.
Yeah.
And so part of the communication, to go back where I started, is if they understood simply we're just relabeling, they think, okay, whatever.
Yes.
All right. And I don't think it's exactly that. But that's where the concern is. And again, you have this incredibly engaged, smart, thoughtful, supportive community. And so that'll be part of that challenge. We're not going to solve it tonight, but I just want to identify that. Dr. Steinberg, go ahead.
Just a comment, and maybe can help with what you just suggested. When we look at data, right, and I use anecdotal, but on the large picture, not on this one, a large group of our students end up going to Big Ten schools, right? These schools are not known for making life easy for people, nor harder either, but they have a standard of rigor. And you rarely hear a student coming from GBN or GBS that went to the regular pathway, if you want to call it, that doesn't do well when he goes to those schools.
Great.
So a different way of seeing this is not just moving the bucket. It's our students were capable of doing better, and I hate to use the word better, were capable of doing a different curriculum, maybe an honors curriculum, which has pushed them to do it. And this may not have gotten them into a more stressful situation. As a large group, I'm not talking about people who are on either side of the spectrum of the group, but I think overall, again, looking at data from university, this may be too much changing 1 year from freshman year to sophomore year in high school, but we may find out that we send all these students to do the honor courses. We keep the honor courses the way they are. Our students are doing okay.
Oh, yeah.
I was in my own, bad example, which is my youngest one who did GMAT all the way and got 35 out of 36 in the ACT. So where was the issue? Was he not paying attention? Was he never challenged to go out of the GMAT? And you never know, and it's one case, right? But this may be the case with our general population, where they were doing great on the regular one. They could still do great on the honors one. It's just that the system didn't look for ways of having more people on the honors one.
Thank you for that.
Very appreciated.
So you've had some input. What's our next step, Dr. Johnson?
Well, this was an informational item this evening. I think Mr. Breitag has mentioned a couple times that he has additional work to do with the committee. There's a lot of work ahead, and I'm sure he'll take this back and we'll review some key points that were brought up this evening and tuck things in as necessary.
Thank you very much
Thank
to
you.
all of your work and Dr. Treasy as well and others. Thank you very much. Item 8.3 on our agenda is the 2023-2024 fiscal year amended budget.
Very briefly, the amended budget provides the board with an update of where we're financially at this point in the school year. After board approval, we'll post the amended budget for 30 days. Dr. Gravel and Ms. Tarver are ready for any questions that may have appeared. And there's a short summary as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. One of the things that we do each and every year is present an amended budget. The reason why we present an amended budget at this time is when we originally act on the budget in September, it is truly our best estimate of revenues and expenditures at that point in time. Since that time, a variety of federal grants have finalized. Our anticipated capital project bills have also finalized, and we're just moving forward with performing those accounting functions where we're moving funds between lines we anticipated our expenditures would be in and lines that they ended up being. We've also moved forward this year with a few larger projects, such as our guaranteed energy savings contract, which does require the district to revise its budget because we are formally moving money from our fund balance or our reserve into our capital projects for future expenditures. With that said, there is no action required for the board this evening, with the exception of authorizing the administration to ultimately make the amended budget available for public inspection. It is a 30-day public comment period. Prior to approval at the last meeting in June, the board will hold a opportunity for community members to speak, and then we'll formally approve the amended budget. And then we'll proceed to review the tentative budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So with that said, Ms. Tarver and I are here to answer any questions.
And Dr. Johnson, anything you want to add?
Nope, that's it.
Ms. Seguin, anything? Nope. Dr. Steinberg?
Two quick questions related. One is you said we moved money from the fund balance to the current budget. And the second one attached to it, it's one question here. What will be, if you have to estimate now, the end balance of the overall budget? Are we going to be like balanced because we had to move funding? And I know there's a good reason for moving funding.
Sure.
Or are we going to finish with an excess on our budget that will help us send back some of the money that we had to move from the balance to cover for other expenses?
That's a great question. So we are awaiting final disbursements from Cook County with respect to our first property tax installment from the 2023 year paid in the spring. We anticipate that will be forthcoming. As of right now, we are optimistic that we will end either balanced or with a small increase to fund balance or a surplus at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Ms. Melnick, anything? No? Mr. O'Hara? Mr. Larky?
No.
Dr. Steinberg had my one question. Perfect. Okay, so 30 days, everyone's good with that? Yes?
You need a vote.
Do you need a vote on that, actually?
We'll take a vote on
Oh,
that. if we'd like.
okay, so entertain a
I
motion.
move that the Board of Education make available the 23-24 amended budget for public inspection on Tuesday, May 14th, and to schedule the public hearing on the adoption of the 22-23 amended budget on June 24.
I second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none?
Mr. Doughty?
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki?
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara?
Yes.
Ms. Segwin?
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
And 8.4 is on our agenda regards the award of bids for the staff computer replacement cycle. Dr. Johns.
So all of our employees, full-time employees, are issued a laptop, generally devised to last, chosen to last 4 years. In most cases, they're on their 5th year. So we had a committee of staff members select new machines. And Mr. Manley and Dr. Gravel will tell us about the choices that our staff made and the cost associated with the purchases.
Certainly. So we are fortunate in this district that for about the last 15, 20 years, our staff have been provided the opportunity to choose whether their preference is an Apple or a Mac device or a PC device. This year, the committee came together and reviewed a variety of options. Of paramount interest is that they were interested in seeing a slightly larger screen for the devices. Not everyone, as you will notice, selected the larger screen, but a decent amount did. What was really awesome is to go to a conversation we had about our new phone service not too long ago. And when reviewing potentially going to a larger screen, we acknowledged that that would require additional money in the budget. We worked collaboratively with our GEA partners and other representatives in our employee groups, and we actually came to the conclusion that in order to provide a larger screen, we would also use this as an opportunity to eliminate the placement of physical phones on many of our desks. And so we kind of combined those two items together. Pleased to present a proposal that looks at an overall expenditure of $1.1 million. We had budgeted about $1.4 million within the budget, so this is a budgetary cost savings, bless you. As I mentioned, it was built into this budget, so the plan would be we would bring this back on consent and have the board approve it in the next meeting. Why that's so important is, as you probably still experience in different things, there are supply chain challenges, so getting the order in sooner than later is always good. We do plan to move forward with a replacement of all these devices primarily during July. Staff are a bit excited to come in and change out their old device for their new device. And similar to what we've done in the past, we do a market analysis to identify the current market value of our older devices, which candidly are 5 years old, are starting to see significant signs of battery damage, battery age, but they still have a value of about $300 to $350. So we'll identify what that value is, and then in alignment with our disposal policy, we'll make those available for purchase for anyone who's interested. The rest will be surplused out, but that will further go to defer the cost of this. So with that said, Mr. Manley has been with us all evening. Thank you so much for that. He or I are happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Dr. Johns, anything you want to add?
Nope, that is great.
First of all, Mr. Manley, thank you for your patience. Board member questions on this, folks?
Almost feel like you have to ask one.
Do you want to share something exciting?
I was actually waiting to talk about the exciting opportunity that Apple unveiling a 15-inch MacBook Air last year gave, and had a great joke about the fact that, you know, since the last time we bought new computers, which was 2019, Apple unveiled the Apple Silicon Macs in 2020, and nothing else exciting happened at all in 2020, except for that. So that was the only thing I was waiting to say.
It's hard to follow that IT humor, but let's, any questions? Thank you. You're, seriously, thank you for doing this. I mean it in all
Absolutely.
seriousness. This is incredibly important. So, but no questions, folks?
I just
Oh,
wanted to refresh my memory on the phone
Mhm.
situation, because I know
Yes.
there was something. Can you remind me about that?
Yeah, so that's part of we're doing two huge projects this summer. We've got the computer refresh, so all faculty and staff members are getting new computers.
Yeah.
We're also moving to the new phone system. So primarily regarding 911 alerts, consistency in 911 alerts and our issues with that, and a significant cost savings in moving from several different phone support providers and vendors to just consolidating everything under the Zoom umbrella that is happening over the course of the summer as well. We've already moved this building and we've already moved off campus. Next to go will be GBS. We'll be doing that right after school is out. Like June.
And what is the name of the phone again? What is it called?
It's a Zoom phone. So just like the meeting, the webinar we're doing now, the Zoom company is offering phone services now. So the desk phones and everything all will operate through Zoom services.
Okay,
Yeah. I'll be
There's a
typing
significant
mobile.
savings for that as well.
yeah, okay.
About 16,000 a year, I think.
Okay,
That's awesome.
thank you.
All right, other questions?
Just to make sure I'm following the bouncing ball of the process and stuff. So we're approving a budget in the upcoming meet, but then you guys are going off to RFP, or is this going, are you working directly with the manufacturers?
For Apple, we do have to work directly with the manufacturer because they only allow education entities to buy directly from them. We already had done a request for quotes process with 3 or 4 different vendors for the PCs, and we've selected a vendor.
Okay, so that'll be coming to us at some point as well too, then to approve that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And if we're going to wait till consent on the 28th, and Mr. Manley, does that, we talked about supply chain, that's okay? That works for you?
Great. Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Any other questions, folks? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks again for your patience, all seriousness. Really appreciate it. All right, item 8.5, award of bid for student photography services. Dr. Johns.
Thank you. As you know, we have a photography service for taking important pictures in our schools. Dr. Bell will review the details and particulars of this particular contract.
Certainly. So one of the items that we commonly will present to the board, typically during this timeline or in June, are a variety of agreements that have expired and need to be renewed. One of the agreements includes what we call photography services. That includes opportunities for families and parents to work with a provider. Recently, it's been Stuart Rogers, and that's where they get their senior photos as well as their underclassmen photos. In order to establish that agreement, the board does need to take action. And so it expired or will expire at the end of this year. Presented before you is information on how Dr. Patak went out to bid, received 2 responses, one from LifeTouch and one from Stuart Rogers. At the end of the day, the experience we have had with Stuart Rogers has been very positive. They offered a competitive package which provides a level of commission back to the school district, which directly goes to defray the cost of the yearbook by about $10 per yearbook. And it also goes to support the overall yearbook operations, which candidly are quite substantial at both Glenbrook North and Glenbrook South. One of the elements you do see is there's also an equipment grant there, and that's to support the different cameras and other related photo equipment that they utilize during their process. So at this point, we present it forward. There's really nothing too different from our prior contract, except that it's renewed for an additional 3 years, and the administration has the authority to extend an additional 2 years, which is our standard process. Happy to answer any questions.
Anything you want to add, Dr. Johns? Folks, anything?
I have one question, but it's slightly related. I go back to this strategic plan, and somebody was talking about barriers. Is there any way here, we have families that get food support from school and everything else. How are we addressing that with the school portraits? Are we getting any money back? Are we offering families that may not be able to afford portraits any way to getting these portraits? Is this being advertised? Because I'm having a hard time thinking about a family who come here and gets food for free from us, thinking about spending even $10, although $10 shouldn't be much, but spending money on getting pictures.
Certainly. So within board policy, first and foremost, all students have the opportunity to sit for a portrait. That's the first thing. And all students that are receiving at the level of free benefits do receive a free yearbook. So there's no charge for that. In terms of the overall packages, we don't provide access to free packages. There are sometimes those negotiated into agreements. That's not currently our situation. Let me follow up with the schools to see different interest that has arisen from that. We do have a variety of different charitable programs that we work with that can support families if that need arises, but it's not something that we've heard a lot about, but I'll follow up and get more information for you.
Thank you. Maybe we can ask the people that make the bids to, I know they're giving us commissions, so it seems to be asking too much, but maybe because we have an idea of how many people are going to go there to ask for a few courtesy packages or things like that.
Well, as opposed to that, maybe a hardship policy that they have, that someone can apply for that if that be the
Yeah.
case, because this is independent of the school.
Yeah.
And it's something ancillary for families to even do.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it in a way that nobody's thinking that you have to ask. It sounds frivolous when you're thinking about not having enough food, having to ask for a scholarship to get a picture. Your parents may tell you, this is not for us, right? Don't even think about it. But if you know you are getting it because you qualify for something in the school, I'm not saying us paying, but those are some of the barriers. You don't have to even think about it. You get a note in your house saying, hey, you qualified to get the portrait, go sit there, you're gonna get the minimum package, whatever, but you're gonna get something out of it.
And we've worked a lot on our financial assistance program documentation. Even with respect to meals, the confusion that might exist with that, understanding what is available, what's not available, and proactively communicating that has been a big goal of this year. So let me follow up with that and see what we might be able to work through with the current provider.
Thank you.
Others, any questions on photography? Okie dokie, that's coming back on consent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next up, you do not get to sit down, sir. 8.6, student fees for the 24-25 school year.
So each spring, the administration presents a schedule of fees, and Dr. Gravel will walk us through this year's schedule.
Certainly. As you can easily see, we provide a variety of years to look back at, 4 years to be exact, as well as what is proposed. You will notice that we have been able to maintain the registration fee, which is the primary fee that families will pay in addition to the Chromebook fee. We were fortunate to see the Chromebook cost decrease this year compared to a few years where we've seen some escalation. So that's why we've been able to maintain those fees. The only fee that has presented an increase is the parking fee. The parking fee is directly attributed to a variety of calculations to the cost of parking lot replacement and maintenance, as well as supervision. And as you likely have seen, the cost of goods continues to increase with respect to asphalt, oil, and things of that nature, as well as the labor cost for supervising the parking lot. So we are recommending an increase to the parking pass from $300 to $325. It is a nominal fee, and that pass fee has not increased actually since I have been here, so over 9 years. We do anticipate over time that price will continue to increase incrementally moving forward. However, in a different situation, I am pleased to stand before you with the support of Dr. Patak to share that we have not recommended an increase to the bus pass fee, which is the first time that we have not needed to increase. The exact reason why is that our ridership has remained consistent with prior years at about 1,000 students, and we've been able to find some efficiencies in routing, which have allowed us to decrease some expenses from that perspective. It is not something that I can say will be guaranteed to carry on in future years, but I am pleased to present a zero increase and a maintaining of that cost for this year. Other than that, there are no additional increases with respect to student fees. I do want to share that our business services team is diligently reviewing our current relationship and structure of our bookstore model. Why that's relevant is we've received a lot of feedback from our parents with respect to credit card fees. In particular, the board took action a few years ago, my first year in role, to not incorporate the cost of credit card processing fees into all fees. Yet, as we look at the amount of fees that are paid by credit card, it is very much the majority. And families have shared concerns that It's one thing to pay the fees, it's another thing to see X amount of convenience fee charges that are tacked on. So we're going to evaluate some different options. It is that time where we're going to go out to see if there's a lower cost processor that might be available to us. And we're also looking to provide more kiosk-based payment solutions for our students. We have heard directly from our student activities and athletic groups that our students prefer to use whether it be Google Wallet or Apple Pay as their primary method of payment, not using a physical card or cash. And so we're looking at some options. And early preview, Crumble Cookie has a very cool looking kiosk environment. You might want to look at it if you are there next time and
I have no
keep
idea.
that in your back of your mind for
I
the
have
future.
no clue what that means. All right.
That
Dr.
is a place
Johnson,
where you can get good cookies.
if that's what it is, I'm in. No, we're good.
Yeah, I want to avoid Crumble Cookies, so if we can find another recommendation for how to check out this system, that would be appreciated.
Panera Bread has a similar looking kiosk.
Okay.
All right.
Something with lower.
Anything want to add, sir?
No, that is it.
Any questions? Ms. Segwin has her hand up,
I have
raised a finger.
Yes, I have one question that is somewhat related to this. This is just related to our supplier for the cafeterias.
Yes.
I can't recall how long the contract is with that particular provider. Is it 3
It is
years?
a 10-year rental agreement. It's not a traditional food service agreement. It's where we provide the space and then there's a commission back to the district in the percentage of sales. In my mind, 2 or 3 years left, but I can follow up with you on.
Yeah, I'm curious just to see, and I don't know if we track this, just to see the changes in cost for just the purchasing of food in the cafeterias. This is something that's just been brought to my attention as well, just from parents and families, just wondering like how that's managed, like what, I mean, we all know that things have increased due to inflation, but it seems to have, I don't know if exponentially is the word, but exponentially increased over the past 4+ years. So I'm just curious.
So I will follow up with Dr. Patak on that and we can actually bring forward a little more understanding of that at our next finance committee meeting.
Yeah, I'd
Just
really
a
like
little
to
background.
understand that better. It'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, terrific. Other questions?
I have a question, and that has to do with the instructional materials.
Yes.
There will not be one this year, and there was not one last year. There's not one this year, there will not be one in the. coming
Forgive me, we've combined all of those fees.
To the registration.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's just a simple registration fee charged to all students. The only exception is historically, we have separated out the Chromebook fee because ultimately students take ownership of the Chromebook after 3 years of payment. We have been going back and forth and based on some of the things we talked about in the strategic plan this evening, we might rethink that to incorporate and have everything in one fee. We're just probably another year off from that.
All right. Any other questions here?
I was going to ask, did you get any feedback from parents being confused about the instructional fee being, okay.
Simplicity. We love it. Yes, sir.
One comment and a question. Regarding the fees, I see that maybe we can explore options. Maybe we offer them like debit card or Zelle or one of those things. Because the main issue with credit card fees is that there's a minimum fee. So
Correct.
if you have a thing where you buy something for $5 or $25, you may end up paying the same fee. While with a debit card may not be the case, or with Venmo or one of the other things may not. And our students are very familiar with that, with
Yeah.
processing payments.
The overwhelming amount of processing tools that are available to governmental agencies still have an interchange fee that's assessed, whether it's Apple Pay, Google Pay, Venmo, or what have you. Where you really try to save is typically there is a percentage amount and oftentimes a per transaction amount.
Yeah.
So you're trying to decrease the flat per transaction amount to make everything normalized to a percentage. And then you try to get that percentage down. Those percentages, as credit card rebates have become quite popular, those percentages have moved from 2.9% to 3.5, sometimes even more. And the real challenge you have is every card has a different rate. A card that's associated with American Express and a hotel is different than an American Express with an airline, and so on and so forth. And that's where you really run into challenges. But we still see those processing charges when we're doing non-card present, even for debit cards. And they're right around the same interchange now for credit cards.
Right. My second, unless you want to add something on this, my second question is more long-term. And I always, everybody has to come to school one way or the other. So basically there are three ways to come to school. Either you pay parking fee, you pay the bus, or somebody brings you to school, right? Yeah, or you walk, that's true. If
You
you live close
scoot,
to
you
school, you can, or bike in summer.
Handspring.
The question is that
something?
the cost, the way we think about cost right now, we think about the cost of the direct service. So if you take the bus, you have a cost based on the cost of the bus. You just mentioned the parking is the cost of maintaining the parking lot. But the reality is that the parents that drive into school also drive through that same set of streets, and the buses drive to the same set of streets. So if the streets are broken or not good, they affect everybody. So I wonder if any school or someone did a study in terms of how to optimize these costs. So technically people.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
No,
yeah.
but I think is the fee though, it's the parking lots, not the regular streets. Am I
No,
just-
it's solely the parking lots and the supervision of the parking lots.
I think that's
Oh,
maybe the
not the
distinction.
fixing of the.
Yeah, it's not
Well,
like
it's
the
the
general
replacement of the lots, but
infrastructure.
not the actual
Just a-
thoroughfares.
I misunderstood that part.
That's
But
okay.
again, I wonder if somebody ever did a study in terms of what would be the best way, because sometimes price drives behavior as well.
So that is a specific issue that we've had conversations with, the cost of entry to a bus pass compared to the cost of entry of a parking permit and how there's some inconsistencies there. Unfortunately, forgive me, unfortunate, it's not the right term, but due to historical decisions, that's kind of just the environment we're in. Our best approach is to minimize through contract negotiations the cost as best as possible. Should there be a desire to spread cost elsewhere, that's certainly an option, but that's where we're at right now here.
Thank you.
I was just gonna comment on Zelle and all the others. As a merchant, they do charge percentages that are sometimes compatible. Depends on how aggressive they are to get you in the door.
So my only question following up on that is, are we still zero at ACH if you just do to your checking account? Is it zero? Or is
So
there
we're
charging
zero
business?
to ACH for parents. However, the district does absorb a fee per ACH. It's not a percentage basis, it's a flat fee, and I forget if it's 50 cents or $1.
It's de minimis comparatively though.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I guess I have a question that, for these services at the bookstore, not across all our services, Quest or whatever we use for food services.
So
Separate charges.
Quest utilizes a system called Vanco RevTrack, of which they absorb all of their fees. Now, part of absorbing their fees then is passed on through overall the cost of goods and services. So there are challenges associated with that.
All right, other questions? Otherwise, back on consent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And drum roll.
Thank you. Our final item for open session is board policies.
That's what I'm seeing here. Mr. Swanson, who now wins the Open Session Patience Award.
Just open session. We have a number of policies before you. A large thank you to the policy committee and your work over the last couple of weeks, as well as a variety of administrative teams or groups that have done review of these policies as well as offered revision. You have the memo before you, maybe just as a point of condensing some time. Happy to answer questions. Some of them are fairly straightforward in regards to the number of revisions. Others might have some language adopted from or suggested from press. There is a sunset policy as well, 5:51. And as I had mentioned before, all of these have been processed accordingly. And of course, one of them was discussed tonight with the accelerated placement program. So happy to answer questions that you may have specifically, if that's okay, as far as going through them in that order.
I think expedition may be welcomed at this hour. So board members, Ms. Melbuck, anything? Mr. O'Hara, since you're the king of policy,
No, I.
Any
enjoyed
wisdom,
going to it.
Mr. Glacki,
No.
Ms. Dr. Steinberg, Ms. Sigmund? You ran the board.
All right, that sounds pretty good.
All right, and so this is supposed to come back. The only thing I want to say is on 6/135, which just makes sure that we're being consistent given our discussion tonight of accelerated replacement, because I know that Mr. Bretag and Dr. Adrizi and others are going to continue to work on that in the ensuing months, which just make sure that we didn't say anything tonight or your work going forward is in any way inconsistent. I know you drove it down to about a page, which is fine. I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up with a policy to approve on the 28th that would somehow constrict your work. Okay.
I think we should be good. We'll have that conversation to ensure that the discussion is not at all at odds with the written policy.
Awesome. Let's make sure, I think we have a Thursday meeting if I recall
We
correctly.
do have a
so
policy
let's-
committee this Thursday.
And maybe you just shove that in there somewhere for us to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Outstanding. All right. Item 9 is the summary of our meeting. We had no community visitors. We did approve our consent agenda. And then we said goodbye to the previous board. Then we had our organizational meeting. And then moved to discussion about our strategic plan. We had a robust discussion about that, as we know, and we'll continue to hear it in the months going forward. We also had another discussion about the Accelerated Placement Act and its implementation. That was informational. The amended budget will be now published for 30 days. We voted on that. And we'll be bringing back the bids for staff computer replacement, the bid for photography service and student fees all on the 28th. And the strategic plan may come up on the 28th. That's the at least current projection. We'll see how any commentary goes on that. And then on board policies, those will come back for second reading on the 28th as well and possible approval. So item 10, possible topics for future board meetings. Please let me know, or Dr. Johns know any of those. Item 11, we do have closed session night to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees with the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity, and collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees pursuant to sections 2C1 and 2 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Terrific. It's 9:55. Let's reconvene at 10.
And Mr. Dowdy, we are back.
All right, we are back and that was symbolic. Item 12O, possible action after closed. The first item is regarding a dismissal. Mr. Galacki.
I move that the board approve the recommendation to dismiss Juan Rodriguez Lopez from employment with Glenbrook District 225 as discussed in closed session.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
Ms. Mullenbach,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki.
Yes.
Mr. Dowdy,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Ms. Segwin.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Item 12.2, regards to salary and wage schedules. Mr. Glowacki.
I move that the Board of Education approve the non-union group salary schedule and miscellaneous wage schedule for the 24-25 fiscal year as presented.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none.
Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg,
Yes.
Mr. Dowdy,
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara,
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbach.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Item 13 on our agenda is adjournment. I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.